Chapter 979. In the auction. Compared to everyone who was busy checking their own collections so that they could raise more spirit stones to participate in the next auction, Yu Haoran seemed to be very relaxed and at ease. Because he had just won the Huang family's accumulation of more than 20 billion level 9 spirit stones, he could easily win any auction item. What's more, Yunxiang had just taken out a gift from Bian Xingrui, which was worth more than 1 billion level 9 spirit stones. Now that he had money in his hands, he did not panic and happily participated in the auction of the fiery phoenix fruit. The starting price of the fiery phoenix fruit is 10 million level 9 spirit stones. Each bid cannot be lower than 1 million spirit stones. Bian Xingrui closed the wooden box made of fire paulownia wood and announced the starting price of the fiery phoenix fruit. 15 million. As soon as Bian Xingrui's voice fell, the auction house's bidding price continued to rise. 20 million, 23 million. The market price of the fiery phoenix fruit, which could directly increase the cultivation of a martial saint expert, was about 60 million. Therefore, when the price of the fiery phoenix fruit exceeded 60 million, not only did the number of people bidding for it begin to decrease, but the number of people bidding for it also began to decrease. Only private rooms number 7, 9, and 12 continued to bid. 63 million. This was the bidding price given by room 12. 64 million. This was the bidding price offered by room 9. 65 million. This was the bidding price offered by room 7. It seems that they are still not willing to take too much risk for the fiery phoenix fruit. Seeing that the three big families of Guangling City, who had more spirit stones, were only increasing the price by 1 million, it meant that the final price in their hearts would not exceed 70 million. So Yu Haoran analyzed the psychological changes of the bidders through the constantly rising bidding price for Yunxiang, and at the same time, he gave a price that was enough to make the final decision. 70 million. As the bidding price of 70 million came from Yu Haoran's mouth, it immediately caused a burst of exclamation from the crowd. They were shocked, not because of the 70 million bid price, but because the bidder was actually from room number 1. Investigate. No matter what method you use, immediately find out who the owner of room 1 is. A silver-haired old man from room 3 ordered with a serious expression. Investigate. Even if you have to bribe the people in the Celestial World Chamber of Commerce with a high price, you have to find out the origin of the owner of room number 1. This was an order from a middle-aged expert in room number 6. As the sound of bidding came from room number 1, the doors from room number 3 to room number 16 were opened one after another. The subordinates who received the order began to investigate the origin of the owner of room number 1. 70 million going once, 70 million going twice, 70 million going thrice. Bian Xingrui did not pay any attention to the people who broke the rules of the auction house. He quickly counted down and decided the final owner of the fiery phoenix fruit. Bian Xingrui signaled his subordinates to hand over the spirit fruits and spirit stones. Then, he signaled his subordinates to hand over the third item. A beautiful girl in a white dress walked up to the high platform with a tray covered by cyan silk gauze in her hand. The 1,000 butterfly stone, which can be used to refine the celestial device of the highest grade of the saint realm, is also suitable for arranging illusions. It is one of the top refining materials in the Tianxian continent. Bian Xingrui introduced in a loud voice as he reached out to lift the cyan silk gauze on the tray. Yu Haoran, get it? Because of the special relationship between Yunxiang and Yu Haoran, as well as with the celestial world, Thaling was embarrassed to use his divine thoughts to check the auction items in advance. Therefore, until Bian Xingrui lifted the cyan silk gauze, he knew that the third item was the 1,000 butterfly stone, which could be used to arrange illusions. He quickly told Yu Haoran excitedly, "Thaling, don't worry, I will help you to get the 1,000 butterfly stone." Hearing the excitement in Thaling's tone, Yu Haoran smiled and comforted him, but he couldn't help asking, "Pagoda spirit, Even though the 1,000 butterfly stone is considered a relatively precious material, it shouldn't be enough to make someone as knowledgeable as you so excited. Yu Haoran, your understanding of the 1,000 butterfly stone is too shallow. You don't know the real function of the 1,000 butterfly stone. After calming down, Faling introduced the real powerful function of the 1,000 butterfly stone in detail. Just as Bian Xingrui had explained earlier, the 1,000 butterfly stone could be used not only to refine artifacts, but also to set up an illusion array. But that was only the simplest illusions, and it couldn't display the ever-changing changes of the 1,000 butterfly stone at all. Combining refining weapons and formations, with the 1,000 butterfly stone as the main material and 18 materials of different attributes, one could refine illusions and formation flags that could trap even martial venerables and peerless masters. 80 million. After hearing Faling's introduction of the 1,000 butterfly stone in detail, Yu Haoran directly called out a price that was the limit of the 1,000 butterfly stone, hoping to successfully obtain the 1,000 butterfly stone. This was because he just happened to have all 18 supplementary materials in his storage ring and Victor. Furthermore, Faling also hoped to prepare some life-saving trump cards for him before he went into hibernation. If one ignored the deeper uses of the 1,000 butterfly stone, just in terms of refining weapons and ordinary illusions, the market price of the 1,000 butterfly stone was between 60 to 70 million. Thus, when Yu Haoran called out a price of 80 million, the crowd immediately fell silent. After waiting for almost a minute and confirming that no one was competing with Yu Haoran for the 1,000 butterfly stone, Bian Xingrui directly announced that the 1,000 butterfly stone belonged to Room 1. As the girl holding the tray of the 1,000 butterfly stone walked down the stage, another girl in a white dress who looked very similar to her also walked up the stage with a tray. There was a pill bottle on the tray. Yu Haoran immediately straightened his posture and stared intently at the pill bottle on the tray. However, unlike him, the people in the hall, who were originally very expectant, looked disappointed when they saw the pill bottle on the tray. I'm sure everyone has already guessed that the fourth item is the useless pill of the third stage, 9th grade Yin-Yang Life Soul Elixir. Seeing that the atmosphere had cooled down, Bian Xingrui did not seem to mind at all as he introduced the item. The useless pill of the Yin-Yang Life Soul Elixir is useless to warriors, but to alchemists who are proficient in alchemy, it is a priceless treasure. This is because by studying the useless pill, there is a certain chance that the formula of the Yin-Yang Life Soul Elixir can be deduced. As for the Yin-Yang Life Soul Elixir's effects, I'm sure everyone is very clear about it. It is known as a heaven-defying life-saving elixir that separates life and death. Although Bian Xingrui's introduction of the useless pill of the Yin-Yang Life Soul Elixir was very tempting, it did not stir up the crowd's mood. After all, both alchemists and ordinary warriors knew very well that the probability of deducing the formula of the elixir from the useless pill was less than 1 in 10,000. Chapter 980. At the auction. The third rank level 9 Yin-Yang Life Spirit Elixir is a waste pill. The starting price is 30 million 9th rank level 1 spiritual stones. Let the auction begin. When they heard Bian Xingrui's starting price, the crowd almost burst out laughing. To them, the Yin-Yang Life Spirit Elixir was a waste pill that had no value. It was not even worth 10,000 spiritual stones, let alone 30 million. 40 million. However, to everyone's surprise, just as they were about to burst into laughter, a bidding price was suddenly offered from private room number 3. Furthermore, it was a 10 million increase. 50 million. What shocked the crowd even more was that as soon as the voice from room number 3 ended, room number 26 also raised the price by 10 million. Yu Haoran, it looks like your old friend is here. Just as room 3 made a bid, Faling used his powerful spiritual force to see through the array that restricted spiritual force. He saw the owner of room 3 and reminded him with a smile. The great elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Yu Haoran said without any surprise. The crowd was not an alchemist, and did not understand the fatal attraction of a long-lost elixir like the yin-yang life spirit elixir to alchemists. Not to mention the starting price of 30 million, even if the starting price was 300 million, with alchemists who did not lack spirit stones, they would not hesitate to bid for it. Furthermore, to the Valley of the Medicine Masters, which was known as the Holy Land of Alchemists, spiritual stones were just a number. That's right, it is the great elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. The tower spirit nodded in confirmation. At the same time, a powerful divine telekinesis entered room 26. Then, he saw someone who made him frown. Yu Haoran, the owner of private room number 26, who is participating in the auction of the waste pills, is a black-clothed old man who is about 60 years old. He has a gloomy aura, and his cultivation is at the peak of the second tribulation quasi-martial venerable realm. Thaling, does this person only have 4 fingers on his left hand and 6 fingers on his right hand? After hearing Thaling's reminder, a sense of familiarity welled up in his heart. He immediately recalled the memories of his previous life. Finally, Yu Haoran thought of a person whose appearance and temperament were very similar to what Thaling had said. That's right. Thaling's divine sense returned to room number 26. He carefully observed the hands of the old man in black on the master chair, and nodded in confirmation. This person's nickname is Old Man Withered Vulture. On the surface, he appears to be a lone cultivator, but in reality, he is an assassin secretly trained by the Yushu Temple. He specializes in dealing with some shady matters for the Yushu Temple, Yu Haoran said with a sneer after receiving confirmation from Thaling. This person had a grudge against you in your previous life? Thaling asked subconsciously when he heard that the Withered Vulture Elder was from the Yushu Temple. No, Yu Haoran said as he shook his head. Before my rebirth, my cultivation was only at the peak of the 9th level of the Martial Emperor realm. How could I possibly alarm a quasi-martial venerable like Old Man Withered Vulture? That's good. Not only did they not have a grudge against each other in their previous lives, but Yu Haoran's tone did not reveal any killing intent when he was evaluating the Withered Vulture Elder. This made Thaling secretly relieved. As the injuries of the original victor gradually began to heal, he felt that he was unable to suppress the sleepiness that came from the advancement of his spirit. Now, he could only rely on his powerful divine sense to suppress the effects of the sleepiness on his spirit. He hoped that he could see Yu Haoran successfully break through to the Martial Saint realm. Therefore, at this stage, it was no longer suitable for him to continue using the possession technique to avoid excessive consumption of his spirit. He could not persist until Yu Haoran's cultivation broke through, and he could not guide him on how to use the law of life and death to create his own law of martial technique. 70 million. When the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters in private room number 3 heard the bid from private room number 26, he could not help but laugh coldly. Following that, he directly raised the bid by 20 million. 80 million. The head elder's action of raising the bid by 20 million caused Old Man Withered Vulture in private room number 26 to frown. Old Man Withered Vulture, who was originally extremely ugly, gave off a sinister and terrifying feeling as his brows furrowed. Thinking of the orders from the underground palace that he had to do everything he could to obtain the yin-yang life soul pill and help the sex alchemy grandmaster to deduce the formula for the yin-yang life soul pill and awaken the sex powerful cultivators whose spirits had been severely injured, Old Man Withered Vulture could only grit his teeth and continue raising the bid. 90 million. 110 million. Just as Old Man Withered Vulture finished his bid, the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters continued to raise the bid by 20 million to suppress his opponent. Damn it! The head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters had raised the bid by 20 million twice in a row. It was obvious that he was trying to humiliate him. Old Man Withered Vulture's pride was instantly aroused, causing him to grit his teeth and continue bidding with his opponent. 120 million. 150 million. But when the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters raised the bid by 30 million for the third time, it immediately extinguished Old Man Withered Vulture's newly aroused pride. In the end, he could only give up helplessly and gloomily. Seeing that the owner of private room number 26 no longer had the ability to continue bidding, a smug smile flashed across the face of the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters. His tone was filled with arrogance. In the southern region, if the Valley of the Medicine Masters claimed to be second in wealth, no one would dare claim to be first. 200 million. But just as Old Man Withered Vulture finished speaking, the sound of bidding immediately rang out and slapped him hard across the face, causing him to look angrily at private room number 1. Looking through the transparent glass in front of him, Yuhauran looked at private room number 4 directly opposite him. Although he could not see Old Man Withered Vulture's reaction, he could imagine that Old Man Withered Vulture wanted to eat him alive. Thinking of this, Yuhauran's face flashed a provocative smile. 300 million. Eyes full of anger, Old Man Withered Vulture stared at private room number 1. He gritted his teeth and directly raised the bid by 100 million, hoping that at the same time he could save face, he could also return a resounding slap to the other party's face. 500 million. But what made Old Man Withered Vulture even more crazy and gloomy was that the other party continued to slap him across the face by doubling the bid price. This caused him to gradually lose his mind, and at the same time, he secretly decided that no matter what, he had to beat the other party in the bidding of spirit stones and save some face for himself. 800 million. Raising the bid by 300 million, Old Man Withered Vulture continued to stare at private room number 1. 160 million. Yuhauran called out a sky-high price that exceeded the other party's bid by several times. Hiss. Chapter 981. In the auction. 1,600 million. That was almost equivalent to 2 years' worth of income for the 5 families in Guangling City. Using the income of a city for nearly 2 years to bid for a useless pill. In the eyes of the crowd, the owner of private room 1 either had too many spirit stones to spend, or his brain had gone haywire. In fact, not to mention the people present, even Bian Xingrue, who was hosting the auction, was shocked by Yuhauran's generosity. Although he knew that Yuhauran's real motive for participating in the auction was the useless elixir of the yin-yang life spirit elixir, he still found it hard to accept the astronomical price of 1,600 million spirit stones. Head Elder, a mere 1,600 million 9th-level first-grade spirit stones is just a drop in the ocean for the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Shouldn't you continue to increase the price by several times? After bidding 1,600 million, Yuhauran ignored the shock of the crowd and waited for a while. Seeing that the head elder in private room 3 had not made a move, he could not help but continue to provoke him. 20. After hearing Yuhauran's provocation, the head elder, who had completely lost his mind, opened his mouth to shout out a bid of 2 billion spirit stones. However, he was stopped by the third elder beside him. Head Elder, although the Valley of the Medicine Masters does not lack spirit stones, we did not consider enough when we left the valley. We do not have many spirit stones on us. At most, we can only take out about 4 billion spirit stones. Su Buguang, the third elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, took the risk of pressing on the head elder's shoulder and trying to persuade him. Now, the useless elixir of the yin-yang life spirit elixir is only the 4th item to be auctioned. I believe that the following items will be even more valuable, so we must reserve enough spirit stones to participate in the next auction. At the same time, with the current level of alchemy in the Valley of the Medicine Masters, it is not very realistic to try to deduce the formula for the yin-yang life spirit elixir. At this point, Su Buguang also looked at room number 1. His tone was mixed with a trace of fear, admiration, and hatred. Furthermore, I have already guessed who the owner of Private Room 1 is. Who is it? After hearing the advice of the third elder, the first elder, who had used the 5 lives mysterious gate elixir to pass the heart tribulation, gradually calmed down by relying on his powerful state of mind. But when she heard that he knew who the owner of Private Room 1 was, her emotions boiled again. The prince consort of the Emperor Qin's empire, Yu Haoran, whose alchemy cultivation has reached the pinnacle of the Grandmaster realm, Su Buguang said with a wry smile. Although every private room had the function of changing the voice to avoid exposing one's true identity, Yu Haoran's provocative tone just now, as well as the tone that made people want to go crazy, was too unique. It immediately reminded him of Yu Haoran, who had once wreaked havoc in Medicine King Valley. Moreover, with Yu Haoran's current reputation and the Emperor Qin's trend of unifying the southern region, he was also qualified to enjoy the treatment in Room 1. Yu Haoran. After hearing Su Buguang point out that the owner of Private Room 1 was Yu Haoran, the first elder's boiling emotions instantly cooled down. He recalled that Valley Head Guzi had once told him that Yu Haoran held something that could decide the life and death of Medicine King Valley. Not only did he decide not to participate in the auction for the Yin-Yang Life Soul Elixir, but he also stopped paying attention to Private Room 1. Yu Haoran, the other party has already guessed your identity. Thaling, who had been paying attention to Private Room 3, reminded Su Buguang with a smile when he heard that Su Buguang had guessed Yu Haoran's identity. Since I was willing to provoke him just now, I had no intention of hiding my identity. Yu Haoran was not surprised that third elder Su Buguang had guessed his identity, nor did he care too much. However, he knew that the other party would definitely not compete with him, so he had achieved his goal. He quietly waited for Bian Xingrui to announce the ownership of the Yin-Yang Life Soul Elixir. Seeing that Private Room 3 had completely calmed down, Bian Xingrui knew that King Medicine had given up on the auction. He began the countdown and excitedly announced that the Yin-Yang Life Soul Elixir belonged to Yu Haoran. The fourth item was the Yin-Yang Life Soul Elixir, which was also the most likely item to go unsold. Not only was it successfully auctioned off, but it was also sold for a sky-high price of 1.6 billion. It completely spread the reputation of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce. It also made the plan that he had painstakingly prepared for half a year more or less successful. Furthermore, the fourth item had been sold for a sky-high price of 1.6 billion. The prices of the next few items would definitely exceed the estimated price. This would also increase his status in the Chamber of Commerce. In his excitement, Bian Xingrui felt even more grateful to Yu Haoran. Waving his hand, he indicated for his subordinates to hand over the pill and spiritual stones. Then, he indicated for the white-clothed girl, who had already been prepared, to bring up the fifth item. It was the same white-clothed girl, the same tray, and the same azure veil that could block spiritual sense. The fifth item that had been taken away from the platform immediately piqued everyone's interest. This is a legacy jade slip that has not been opened yet. It might contain a heaven-tier mental cultivation method or martial technique. It might also contain a heaven-defying secret technique that can increase one's strength by several times or even over a dozen times. After unveiling the azure veil, Bian Xingrui pointed at the azure jade slip on the tray and introduced it in a slightly enticing tone. Of course, it might also be the trashiest legacy with the least recorded experience. Thus, this will all depend on your luck. The starting price of the legacy jade slip is 1 million level 9, first-grade spiritual stones. Each bid cannot be raised by less than 10,000. The auction will now begin. Although Bian Xingrui had already announced the start of the auction, there was no sound of bidding immediately. After all, there were many unknowns in the legacy jade slip. If the outcome was as Bian Xingrui had said, it might be the trashiest legacy or only recorded some experience, then spending a huge amount of spiritual stones on the jade slip would not be worth it. Master, can you help Uncle Bien? Yunxiang asked Yu Haoran rather anxiously when she saw the atmosphere suddenly turn cold. I can't do it. Knowing that Yunxiang wanted him to do it, Yu Haoran shook his head and explained. After using the trashiest yin-yang life soul pill, I've already given everyone the impression that I'm rich and can crush them with spiritual stones. If I participate in the auction for the legacy jade slip, no one will dare to compete with me. Master, I understand. After hearing Yu Haoran's explanation, Yunxiang nodded and gave up on the idea of helping Bian Xingrui. 1,010,000 spiritual stones. After nearly 3 minutes of awkward silence, a young martial king in the hall mustered up his courage and shouted out a bid. The cold atmosphere instantly heated up. That's right. Perhaps the legacy jade slip might contain the trashiest mental cultivation method or martial technique. But what if it was a heaven-tier mental cultivation method or martial technique? What if it was a top-notch cultivation method? Furthermore, life was a gamble to begin with. It was all about luck. Chapter 982. In the auction. 2 million. 2,300,000. 3 million. Since only the ordinary cultivators in the hall participated in the auction at the beginning, the price did not increase by much even though there were many people bidding for the inheritance jade slip. It rose by hundreds of thousands. However, after the VIPs in the private rooms participated in the auction, the price of the inheritance jade slip began to skyrocket. 10 million. 20 million. When the price of the inheritance jade slip exceeded 100 million, Bian Xingrui, who was standing on the high platform, secretly heaved a sigh of relief. According to his initial expectations, as long as the price of the inheritance jade slip, which was full of uncertainty, exceeded 10 million, the Chamber of Commerce would not suffer a loss. If it exceeded 50 million, they would make a huge profit. If it exceeded 100 million, it would be like the yin-yang life soul pill, achieving the effect of promoting the Chamber of Commerce's reputation. Now, not only did his initial expectations exceed the overall strength of the inheritance jade slip, but they also greatly exceeded it. As Bian Xingrui heaved a sigh of relief, endless ecstasy surged in his heart. Master, what's going on? When the price of the inheritance jade slip exceeded 100 million, the skyrocketing trend did not stop. Yunxiang immediately felt that she did not understand and could not understand. After all, no one had participated in the bidding of the inheritance jade slip at the very beginning. Now that it had exceeded 100 million, there was still no stopping the crazy bidding. This drastic contrast left her completely confused. Yunxiang, this is the complexity of human nature. Yu Haoran sighed softly and explained as he glanced at the crowd in the hall, whose eyes were gradually turning scarlet, and heard the shouts of the VIPs in the private rooms. Gambling is a natural instinct that has seeped into the marrow, but it is also a deep-rooted bad habit that cannot be eradicated. Some people can rely on their tenacity to suppress the gambling in their natural instincts, but many people are willing to release their gambling instincts. At this point, Yu Haoran pointed at the cultivators in the hall, whose eyes had turned scarlet and whose breathing had gradually become heavier due to their overly agitated emotions. In certain environments and atmospheres, it is easier to stimulate the gambling instincts in human nature. Even those who can usually suppress their gambling instincts cannot avoid being affected by such environments and atmospheres. Master, according to your understanding of human nature, how much will the final price of the inheritance jade slip reach? Just now, Yu Haoran's explanation of human nature made Yunxiang feel that she seemed to have understood it, but when she thought about it carefully, she was still very confused. In order not to appear too clumsy in front of her master, Yunxiang had to change the topic. How could Yu Haoran not see through Yunxiang's deliberate attempt to change the topic? However, he did not expose her, nor did he continue to explain human nature. This was because the more experience and knowledge she gained, the more she would understand and be able to avoid and restrain the bad habits of human nature. It should be around 400 million, but it won't exceed 500 million. Although it was said that once a person fell into madness, they would recklessly do things that exceeded their bottom line, but the bottom line also had a certain limit. Therefore, Yuhauran made his own judgment based on the various changes in the bidding price. And the final fact also proved his speculation just now. The final price of the inheritance jade slip was fixed at 473 million, which made Yunxiang's admiration for her master reach the limit. The final price far exceeded the expected price in his heart, which made Bian Xingrui's face bloom with happiness. He quickly signaled his subordinates to trade the jade slip and spirit stones, so as to prevent the distinguished guest from the 9th private room from regretting. God bless. In the 9th private room, Gu Minglong put his palms together and secretly prayed to God. God bless the inheritance in the jade slip. It must be a mental cultivation method and martial arts technique above the heaven rank. During the crazy bidding, Gu Minglong enjoyed the double psychological and visual enjoyment every time he shouted a high price. But when the bidding was over, the huge amount of spirit stones of 473 million immediately brought heavy pressure to him. Although he was the son of the patriarch of the Gu family, and also the seed of the Gu family with the most potential to reach the top 100 in the Hidden Dragon list, but in order to bid for an inheritance jade slip that could not be predicted, the Gu family spent nearly 1.5 years of income, taking a great risk. If the inheritance in the jade slip was worth 473 million spirit stones, no one would find trouble with him. But if the inheritance in the jade slip was worthless trash, then even with the protection of his father, he was afraid that he would be punished unbearably. Seeing his third uncle painfully handing over the spirit stones to the staff of the Chamber of Commerce, Gu Minglong's forehead was sweating, and his hands trembled slightly as he took the inheritance jade slip. After taking a deep breath, his mind entered the jade slip. Then, the jade slip burst into a dazzling red light, which not only shrouded the entire auction venue, but also Guangling City was also shocked by the red light. Ha ha! With the red light bursting out of the jade slip, Gu Minglong's arrogant laughter came from the 9th private room. Alas! Accompanied by Gu Minglong's arrogant laughter, whether it was the people in the hall or the guests in the private rooms, they all sighed unwillingly. In this regard, Yuhauran did not feel pity, nor did he have the slightest envy or jealousy. His heart was as calm as a lake. As for Yuhauran's calm expression, the tower spirit nodded in approval, making it feel even more at ease about the upcoming deep sleep. This also caused the worship in Yunxiang's eyes to break through the limit, and a thought that shouldn't have appeared in her heart. In the entire auction venue, besides Yuhauran, there was another person who had a relatively calm reaction, and that was the host of the auction, Bian Xingrui. Because the Chamber of Commerce had decided to take out the inheritance jade slip for auction, they had already used special methods to conduct a detailed check in advance. Although they could not determine the specific content of the jade slip, they also knew that the inheritance in the jade slip was not worth 473 million spirit stones. And Gu Minglong's reaction just now could only explain two problems: either his knowledge was too low, and he did not know the value of the jade slip inheritance, or in order to avoid the punishment of losing a large number of spirit stones, he deliberately pretended to get a treasure. But no matter what Gu Minglong thought, all of this had nothing to do with Bian Xingrui. So, he nodded and signaled his subordinates to continue to take out the 6th auction item. It was still a tray, and it was still covered by a cyan veil. However, unlike the previous auction items, the tray this time was much larger, reaching a full 1.5 meters. Moreover, the person holding the tray had also been replaced by a sturdy man. Chapter 983. In the auction. After scanning the crowd in the hall, Bien Xingrue did not introduce the origin of the auction item as he had done with the previous auction items. He did not reveal the true identity of the auction item. Instead, he directly removed the green silk covering the tray, allowing everyone to use their vision and divine sense to observe the auction item on the tray. It was a beast egg about 50 centimeters tall. His divine sense swept across the beast egg. The vitality in the egg was as vast as the sea. It meant that the beast egg was intact, and it also proved that the beast egg was of a very high grade. However, what Yu Haoran could not figure out was that he was unable to distinguish the true origin of the beast egg through the aura it emitted. Although he did not dare to say that he could distinguish all kinds of exotic beasts in the world, his experience of exploring countless ruins and forbidden lands in his previous life had made him familiar with most of them. Helpless, he could only seek help from Thaling in his sea of consciousness. Clear Sky Bull. After a full 3 minutes of silence, Thaling finally remembered the true origin of the beast egg. Clear Sky Bull. After hearing Thaling give the specific type of beast egg, Yu Haoran immediately searched his memories. In the end, he found some information about the Clear Sky Bull in the memories of the Cloud Fog Swamp where he obtained the Poison Dao Cannon. Thaling, could it be the Clear Sky Bull that can shatter mountains with one roar, split the earth with 2 roars, and split the sky with 3 roars? Yu Haoran asked with a slightly trembling voice. That's right. While nodding to confirm, Thaling added, the 3 roars are only the most commonly used and most ordinary instinctive martial skill of the Clear Sky Bull. Actually, the truly heaven-defying martial skill it possesses is the soul-shattering 6 feet and soul-shattering 2 horns inherited from its ancestors' bloodline. Everyone, this beast egg was brought out by a consecrator of the Chamber of Commerce who risked his life from one of the 10 great forbidden lands, the Cloud Fog Swamp. After giving everyone a full 10 minutes to examine and discuss, Bien Xingrue finally introduced some information about the beast egg. Although we haven't found out the true species of this egg, everyone should know that this egg is extraordinary from the boundless vitality contained within it. Therefore, the starting price for this unknown beast egg is 100 million 9th level 1st grade spiritual stones. Each bid must not be lower than 1 million spiritual stones. Let the auction begin. The starting price was 100 million 9th level 1st grade spirit stones. To most of the cultivators present, it was an unbearable amount. Therefore, after announcing the start of the auction, Bien Xingrue looked at the 36 private rooms, especially the top 20 private rooms. For the wealthy guests in the private room, 100 million 1st grade 9th level spirit stones was not too high a price. 130 million. Bien Xingrue didn't have to wait for very long. After about 20 seconds, the sound of bidding came from room 33. 200 million. Immediately after, Elder Withered Vulture, who had once competed with Medicine King Valley for the Yin-Yang Life and Death Pill, directly raised the price by 100 million, as if he was determined to win. 300 million. In room 6, a young man from the Gue family, the number 1 family in Guangling City, also raised the price by 100 million, as if he was determined to win. Yu Haoran, to be honest, I don't want you to participate in the competition for the Clear Sky Bull egg. After knowing the powerful strength of the Clear Sky Bull, Yu Haoran immediately looked at the beast egg with a glint in his eyes, as if he was determined to win. But at this moment, Thaling in his sea of consciousness suddenly suggested. Why? Yu Haoran asked in confusion. In ancient times, the true strength of the Clear Sky Bull was not inferior to the king of the 9 great mythological beasts. The reason why they were not famous was because they were too rare, and also because the time they needed to grow was too long and the energy they needed was too large. At this point, Thaling looked at the beast egg on the high platform and said with a helpless tone, "It will take at least 300 to 500 years for this egg to fully hatch. Moreover, you have to provide it with at least 10,000 to 30,000 spirit stones of the first grade of the 9th step every day. If it wasn't for Yunxiang by his side, Yu Haoran would definitely suck in a breath of cold air due to extreme shock. Even if it was according to the minimum supply of spirit stones, 10,000 spirit stones of the first grade of the 9th step every day, 365 days in a year, 300 years would be more than 100,000 days. Then, the amount of spirit stones accumulated would be equivalent to thousands of 9th step spirit veins. And this was only hatching the beast egg. If he wanted it to grow to a level comparable to the king of the 9 great mythological beasts, all the spirit stones in the entire Tianxian continent would not be enough. Moreover, it still needed such a long time to hatch and grow. Therefore, while forcefully suppressing the shock in his heart, Yu Haoran also completely gave up on bidding for the clear sky bull egg. 1 billion. Just as Yu Haoran gave up on bidding for the clear sky bull egg, the voice of the great elder came from private room number 3. The bidding price of 1 billion was already the limit that all the VIPs in the private room could afford to bid for the beast egg. Although the beast egg contained abundant vitality, which was enough to prove the strength of the beast egg, without knowing the specific species, if it was a beast with a gentle personality and not good at fighting, then spending more than 1 billion spirit stones was obviously not worth it. Therefore, after the price exceeded 1 billion, the scene suddenly quieted down. And the bidding price of 1 billion was also the auction price that Lian Xingrui had originally estimated. Therefore, seeing that no one continued to compete with the Medicine King Valley, Bian Xingrui planned to start the countdown. Suddenly, Yu Haoran's voice came from private room number 1. 2 billion. Yu Haoran, didn't you already give up on bidding? Thaling questioned with some displeasure after hearing Yu Haoran's bid price. Thaling, when I entered the auction house, Bian Xingrui once gave me a gift worth 1 billion 9th level first grade spirit stones. Now, I plan to return the favor by raising the price of the clear sky bull egg. Gesturing to Thaling not to be angry, Yu Haoran explained the reason why he was outstanding. He bid 1.6 billion to sell a useless pill, and now he directly bid 2 billion to buy an unknown type of beast egg. Everyone present was envious and jealous of the owner of private room number 1. Is 2 billion expensive? Yu Haoran asked provocatively as he could hear everyone whispering about him in the hall. Sir, do you know what 2 billion 9th level first grade spirit stones mean? After hearing Yu Haoran's provocative question, a hothead in the hall immediately stood up and questioned. What does it mean? Yu Haoran asked knowingly. It represents all the income of the 5 major families in Guangling City for 3 years, it represents the military expenditure of a dynasty for nearly a year, and it represents all the expenses needed for a martial artist to advance from martial disciple to the peak of 9th level martial saint. Chapter 984. In the auction. Kid, then do you know what this beast egg represents? Without the slightest bit of displeasure because of the other party's aggrieved questioning, Yu Haoran began to show the origin of the clear sky bull egg according to the plan. What does it represent? The hothead asked in confusion. This is a beast egg that contains nearly 90% of the ancient clear sky bull's bloodline. Yu Haoran directly pointed out the type of beast egg. Clear sky bull. After hearing Yu Haoran's answer, everyone present fell into deep thought and began to search for information about the clear sky bull in their memories. Even Yu Haoran only knew about the origin of the clear sky bull after he ventured into the cloud mist swamp in his previous life and accidentally saw some records left behind by the clear sky bull. Moreover, these people in front of him were not very experienced. Sir, what kind of exotic beast is the clear sky bull? After asking all the people around him and finding that no one knew the origin of the clear sky bull, the hothead looked up at the number 1 private room and asked. The first roar shatters the mountain, the second roar shatters the earth, and the third roar shatters the sky are the most ordinary martial arts of the clear sky bull. The 6th foot shatters the soul, and the 2nd horn shatters the soul are still the bloodline martial arts of the clear sky bull. Combined with Thalink's introduction just now, Yuhauran fully demonstrated the strength of the clear sky bull and aroused the true greed in everyone's hearts. Yuhauran, could it be the clear sky bull from ancient times whose strength was not inferior to the 9 great divine beast kings? Just as Yuhauran fully demonstrated the strength of the clear sky bull, the great elder in the number 3 private room asked in an excited tone. As the Medicine King Valley, which had the longest inheritance in the southern region and was good at making use of the convenience of refining pills to collect various ancient books, it could be said to have gathered all kinds of knowledge from many different periods. And the great elder, who liked to travel around, happened to see a record about the clear sky bull. That's right. Not caring that the great elder directly pointed out his identity, Yuhauran nodded and confirmed. It is the clear sky bull whose strength is not inferior to one of the 9 great divine beast kings of ancient times. 3 billion. The moment he received Yuhauran's confirmation, the great elder immediately raised the price by 1 billion, looking like he would never give up. 2 billion. The young man from the Gue family, who had come from room 6, shouted out the price excitedly. He then immediately instructed the middle-aged man beside him. Uncle, immediately inform the family to prepare the spirit stones. I, the young master, must obtain the clear sky bull's beast egg. All right. The middle-aged man immediately nodded in agreement. Then, he got up and left the private room, using a special method to contact his family. 3 billion. In private room number 7, the young man from the Phone clan also made a bid and arranged for the clan's experts to go and collect the spirit stones. 6 billion. 8 billion. As the auction price of the clear sky bull's egg exceeded 4 billion, Bian Xingrue, after experiencing the initial ecstasy that he could not suppress in his heart, gradually became numb to the increasing number of spirit stones. He discovered a strange phenomenon. That was that Yuhauran, who had solemnly introduced the origin of the clear sky bull's egg, did not participate in the auction after bidding 2 billion. This did not seem to be in line with his character. In fact, Bian Xingrue was not the only one who discovered this strange phenomenon. The crowd, who had also exceeded the bidding capacity, also discovered Yuhauran, who had ceased to bid. Yuhauran, why aren't you participating in the auction of the clear sky bull's egg? The great elder, who had bid for 3 billion, asked with a gloomy expression. Yuhauran, who was about to explain to Yunxiang why he did not bid for the clear sky bull's egg, did not continue to speak softly after hearing the great elder's question. Instead, he directly explained in a loud voice. I just suddenly thought that although the clear sky bull's strength is very strong, it will take too long to hatch its egg and nurture its growth. It's not suitable for my current living conditions, so I can only give up helplessly. How long does the egg take to hatch? Yuhauran's explanation made the great elder gradually have a bad feeling in his heart, so he quickly asked. It seems to take 300 to 500 years. Yuhauran suppressed the laughter in his heart and reminded him. Yuhauran, you tricked me. The great elder immediately roared angrily. 300 to 500 years of time. For the great elder, who did not have much confidence in breaking through to the martial venerable realm, it was almost equivalent to half of his lifespan. However, this was only the process of hatching the egg. According to the calculation of the ratio between hatching and growth time of the egg, the clear sky bull that was hatched would probably still be a young pet beast without much fighting power on the day he closed his eyes. Therefore, the great elder, who knew that he had been deceived, was so furious. After all, 3 billion level 9 first-grade spirit stones were all the spirit stones they had brought with them when they left the valley this time. Great elder, be careful of the trouble that comes from the mouth. After hearing the great elder's angry shout, the smile on Yuhauran's face instantly disappeared and his tone was filled with murderous intent. Did I use my sword to force you to make a bid just now? You! Although you did not use your sword to force me, your description of the clear sky bull's strength was a naked temptation. The effect of temptation was even more excessive than using your sword to force me. However, this kind of thinking could not be used as a reason to refute the other party's question. Therefore, the Great Elder could only point at the void in the number 1 private room, not knowing how to refute Yuhauran. Great Elder, you are the one who is greedy and insatiable. Now you are questioning me. Be careful that I don't say something I shouldn't say. Yuhauran threatened fiercely. Yuhauran, you win. Hearing Yuhauran threaten him with Gu Zi's weakness, the Great Elder, who did not know how to refute Yuhauran, could only choose to swallow the bitter pill in the end. But when he thought of losing 3 billion level 9 first-grade spirit stones for nothing and being unable to continue participating in the next auction, driven by anger and unwillingness, he began to consider whether he should secretly contact the Assassins' Organization and the Demon Dao experts and ask them to kill Yuhauran. Yuhauran, what are you trying to do? Seeing that Yuhauran was deliberately targeting the Great Elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Thaling gradually realized that something was wrong. If he only wanted to repay Bian Xingrue's gift, then he wouldn't have directly raised the price to 2 billion at the beginning. He could have told the truth when the Great Elder had just called out 3 billion. But not only did he not tell the truth, but when the price reached the limit of what everyone could bear, he told the truth to provoke the Great Elder. There was definitely something wrong with this. Yuhauran did not hide the reason why he deceived the Great Elder. Firstly, he hoped to use the means of attracting hatred to divert the Great Elder's attention so that he would not use the life elixir furnace left behind by the alchemy master in the short term. This would give his first clone enough time to cultivate the alchemy master's inheritance. Chapter 985. In the auction. The real reason for deceiving the Great Elder was because of the 7th auction item that was about to appear. After hearing Yuhauran's explanation, the Tower Spirit immediately used its powerful divine sense and directly penetrated the platform. It saw the white-clothed girl holding the green silk cloth on the tray. Later, he finally understood why Yuhauran wanted to deceive the Great Elder. Because the 7th auction item was the divine pure water that could greatly increase the success rate of alchemy. Moreover, the quantity was a whole pill bottle. But what puzzled Thaling was how Yuhauran, who couldn't use divine thought to penetrate the green silk gauze, knew that the 7th auction item was the divine pure water. Yun Xiang asked me earlier if the reason I gave up on the auction of the clear sky bull's egg was because of the heavenly pure divine water that was about to be auctioned. Yuhauran glanced at Yun Xiang, who was pretending to cultivate, from the corner of his eyes as he replied somewhat helplessly. In fact, with Yun Xiang's special status in heavenly earth and Bian Xingrue's doting on her, she knew the whole process of this auction. But she scrupulously abided by the Chamber of Commerce's duty of confidentiality and pretended to know nothing, deceiving him. If she hadn't been full of doubts about his sudden abandonment of the auction of the clear sky bull egg and inadvertently spilled the beans, he wouldn't have deceived the Great Elder so miserably. I see. Hearing that it was Yun Xiang who revealed the secret of the divine pure water, Thaling quickly reminded while solving the doubts in his heart. Yuhauran, you can directly ask her what the next auction items are, and we can also prepare in advance. Thaling, you didn't see that she has stopped massaging my shoulders and making tea for me as her master. This is to express her refusal to disclose the secret of the remaining auction items. Yuhauran felt helpless, but there was also a trace of relief in his heart. After all, being able to abide by her duties showed that Yun Xiang was a person with a firm will and was not easily affected by external forces. And people with this kind of character were outstanding in the cultivation of the state of mind, which was very conducive to improving the cultivation of the poison path. A transaction as high as 3 billion ninth rank first-grade spirit stones, was probably in the top 50 transactions since the establishment of Heavenly Earth. Therefore, he signaled everyone at the scene to wait for a while. Bian Xingrui personally brought the clear sky bull egg to the number 3 private room, and then completed the transaction with the Great Elder face to face. After returning to the high platform, Bian Xingrui waved to the girl in white who was holding the 7th auction item. Looking at the auction item covered by the green silk gauze, Bian Xingrui took a deep breath, and then stretched out his hand to open the green silk on the tray. This is the divine pure water. Just as Bian Xingrui reached out to remove the cyan veil and revealed the auction item on the tray, the first elder, who had barely managed to suppress his anger, immediately cried out, "Inform the old ancestor and patriarch to come here immediately. The great elder to the great to the great elder to the great to the great to the great to the to be called to the great great to the great elder." Nodding his head, the great to have just returned to the private room immediately left the room. Then, he used the highest level of communication talisman to send the divine pure water and the great request of the great to the clan. "Inform the old ancestor and patriarch to come here immediately." The young men in the number 7 and number 9 private rooms made the same decision as the young man from the Gue clan. "Yu Haoran, you forced me to do this," the great elder, who quickly came back to his senses, said through gritted teeth as he looked at the number 1 private room with fire in his eyes. Yu Haoran was not only a top grandmaster in alchemy and formations, but he was also a 3rd tribulation quasi-martial honorable. He was the most valued son-in-law of Emperor Qin, who had an emperor-level sword in his hand. Therefore, after weighing the pros and cons, the great elder finally suppressed the idea of taking revenge on Yu Haoran to avoid bringing disaster to the Medicine King Valley. But with the appearance of the divine pure water, the idea that he had just suppressed emerged again, and he decided to put it into action. "Great Elder, actually, we still have a chance." Feeling the great elder gnashing his teeth and the strong murderous aura that surged from his body, Su Buguang knew that he had the intention to kill Yu Haoran. Although he did not agree with this, he knew that he could not persuade him directly. He could only think of a way to resolve the grievances in his heart. "What chance?" the great elder, who was immediately attracted, quickly asked. "Use the beast egg of the clear sky bull and all the elixirs that we have with us to trade with the heavenly earth for enough spiritual stones to bid," Su Buguang suggested. "The price of the elixirs is easy to negotiate, but how much is the beast egg of the clear sky bull?" After hearing Su Buguang's suggestion, the great elder nodded in agreement. At the same time, he was hesitant about the valuation of the clear sky bull. After all, he had spent 3 billion ninth level first-rank spiritual stones on the beast egg of the clear sky bull. However, if he sold it at the original price, Bian Xingrui would definitely not agree. However, if he sold it at half price, it would be equivalent to giving away 2 billion spiritual stones to the heavenly earth for free. This was something that the Great Elder could not accept. "Great Elder, you have to be prepared to spend a lot of money." Su Buguang proposed to sell the beast egg of the clear sky bull to the heavenly earth. In addition to being able to quickly recoup most of the spiritual stones so that they could have enough spiritual stones to compete for the divine pure water, Su Buguang also did not want the beast egg of the clear sky bull to involve too much of the Great Elder and the Valley Master's energy and affect the development of the Medicine King Valley. However, Su Buguang knew very well in his heart that for a profiteer like Bian Xingrui, who was more shrewd than a fox, he should not be deluded into thinking of taking advantage of him. Therefore, Su Buguang reminded him with a solemn expression, "Because Bian Xingrui will definitely not offer a very high price. Buguang, if the price offered by Lian Xingrui is lower than 2.5 billion, I would rather continue to keep the beast egg of the clear sky bull." He needed to spend a lot of money. After hearing Su Buguang's reminder, the Great Elder felt the pinch and directly expressed his attitude. "All right." Hearing the expected price given by the Great Elder, Su Buguang smiled bitterly and nodded, but he knew that the shrewd Bian Xingrui would never agree. "Yunxiang, don't pretend anymore. Tell me immediately, how many more auction items are there and the situation of all the auction items?" Thaling, who had been using divine thoughts to monitor the third private room, immediately informed Yu Haoran after hearing the Great Elder and Su Buguang's countermeasures. When he heard that the Great Elder and Su Buguang were going to sell the beast egg of the clear sky bull, an idea immediately flashed through Yu Haoran's mind, and he quickly asked Yunxiang, "Master, I really don't know." Seeing that Yu Haoran directly exposed her pretending to cultivate, Yunxiang could only open her eyes and get up, then said with a bitter smile, "Yunxiang, I don't want to force you to break the rules of the auction house. It's just that the next auction item may be related to the success or failure of my plan." Seeing that Yunxiang was unwilling to reveal the information of the remaining auction items, Yu Haoran took the initiative to make a rare request. Chapter 986. In the auction. Seeing Yu Haoran's pleading eyes, Yunxiang hesitated. Although she owed her master a great debt of gratitude, the Chamber of Commerce had also treated her well. After thinking it over, Yunxiang could only choose a vague way to respond to her master's request. "Master, Uncle Bien has prepared a total of 8 items for this auction. The last item will be the true finale of the auction." Speaking up to here, Yunxiang shut her mouth tightly, looking like she was unwilling to say more. "Yunxiang, my good disciple, thank you." Although Yunxiang didn't say what the final item was, the information she revealed was enough for him to smoothly complete his plan. Through the transparent glass in front of him, he saw that Bian Xingrui didn't have any intention of introducing the heavenly pure divine water. He understood that he was giving everyone time to prepare. He turned his head and instructed Yunxiang. "Yunxiang, you stay in the private room first. Master has something to do and needs to go out for a few minutes." Yunxiang nodded and didn't ask Yu Haoran why he left. Haoran greets Third Elder. After leaving the first private room, Yu Haoran quickened his pace and arrived in front of the third private room. Just as he was about to knock on the door was opened by the Third Elder, Su Buguang. Yu Haoran hurriedly smiled and greeted him. "Su greets the Emperor's son-in-law." Third Elder didn't dare to be negligent and returned the greeting. Yu Haoran looked past Third Elder and saw the gloomy First Elder. He smiled and said, "Third Elder, this Emperor's son-in-law wants to talk to you with the First Elder." First Elder looked at Yu Haoran with a gloomy expression and couldn't suppress his surging anger as he roared, This Elder doesn't want to see you. Leave immediately." First Elder, as the saying goes, there are no eternal friends or eternal enemies in this world. There are only eternal benefits. Ignoring the First Elder's roar to chase him away, Yu Haoran motioned for Su Buguang to make space, and stepped into private room number 3. "Now, this Emperor's son-in-law is here to give you spirit stones. Are you going to continue chasing me out?" Seeing Yu Haoran enter without invitation, Su Buguang shook his head with a bitter smile. He could only reach out and close the door of the private room. Then, he walked to the First Elder's side and used his eyes to signal him to deal with the other party. "Emperor's son-in-law, if I'm not wrong, I'm afraid you've taken a fancy to the egg of the clear sky bull." Su Buguang asked with a smile, as he looked directly into Yu Haoran's eyes. Third Elder is wise. Yu Haoran went straight to the point after praising the young man. Third Elder, please name your price. 5 billion spirit stones. 5 billion spirit stones. Although he said that he would leave it to Su Buguang to deal with, the First Elder, who could not suppress his anger after thinking about how Yu Haoran had cheated him of all the spirit stones he had brought with him, directly demanded an exorbitant price. "First Elder, this Emperor's son-in-law has come with sincerity. I hope that you won't affect the deal between us because of your emotions. Hearing that the first elder had offered a price that exceeded the auction price by 200 million, the smile on Yuhaoran's face gradually disappeared, and his tone became serious. Right now, in the entire auction, other than Bian Xingrui who can purchase the egg of the clear sky bull, only this emperor's son-in-law has the strength, courage, and financial resources to do so. But what kind of person is Bian Xingrui? I'm afraid I don't need to introduce him too much. I would rather give the egg of the clear sky bull to Bian Xingrui for nothing than sell it to a despicable and sinister person like you. Ignoring Yuhaoran's reminder, the first elder roared with a disgusted expression. Okay. Shrugging his shoulders, Yuhaoran nodded with an indifferent attitude, then turned and walked directly to the door of the private room. But just as he reached the door of the private room, he suddenly said, "By the way, as far as this emperor's son-in-law knows, there are only a total of 8 auction items in this auction held by Heavenly Earth. And as the last auction item, its value is dozens of times more than the Heavenly Pure Divine Water. If you plan to give up the bid for the Heavenly Pure Divine Water and the final auction item, then just pretend that this emperor's son-in-law has never been here." "Emperor's son-in-law, please wait." After hearing the news that Yuhaoran deliberately revealed, the third elder's eyes flashed with a glimmer of light as he immediately urged him to stay. "Third elder, I don't think Bian Xingrui will give everyone too much time to prepare the spirit stones, so can you make a reasonable deal? I hope you and the first elder can reach an agreement as soon as possible." Facing Su Buguang's urging to stay, Yuhaoran reminded coldly. 5 billion. Under the observation of Su Buguang's divine sense, the first elder finally suppressed his anger and gave his bottom-line price. At least 5 billion. Otherwise, this elder would rather give up the bid for the Heavenly Pure Divine Water and the final auction item. "First elder, a deal requires sincerity." Turning around, Yuhaoran's expression was filled with arrogance as he spoke. If not for the fact that this emperor's son-in-law had not made up his mind at that time, based on my understanding of the clear sky bull, when Bian Xingrui announced the start of the auction, I would have directly pointed out the long period of incubation and cultivation of the clear sky bull. I am absolutely confident that the bidding price will be lowered below 1 billion. Therefore, on account of the Medicine King Valley's reputation as the holy land of the alchemy Tao, this emperor's son-in-law will bid 1 billion. If you can accept it, we will exchange immediately. If you can't accept it, this emperor's son-in-law will leave immediately. First elder. Reaching out to stop the first elder who was about to curse, Su Buguang hurriedly used his divine sense to persuade him. He did not know how Su Buguang persuaded the first elder, who was originally furious. Not only did his anger gradually disappear, but his expression also gradually calmed down. Moreover, in the end, he agreed to the transaction of 1 billion. Here. Although he did not know how the first elder was convinced by the third elder in the end, all of this had nothing to do with him. He just wanted to use the lowest price to get what he wanted. After handing over the 1 billion spirit stones that he had prepared beforehand to the third elder, and taking the leather bag containing the clear sky bull's egg, Yuhaoran did not have any intention of stopping. He directly opened the door and left the third private room. Looking at Yuhaoran leaving the private room, a cold light flashed in the first elder's eyes, while a trace of worry appeared in Su Buguang's eyes. Then, he took the pills given by the first elder and left the private room to exchange spirit stones with Bian Xingrui. Yuhaoran, since you've already given up on the auction of the clear sky bull's egg, why are you thinking of a way to take it back now? After Yuhaoran returned to the first private room, Thaling hurriedly asked. Thaling, don't worry. I won't delay my cultivation because of the clear sky bull. Yuhaoran, who knew that Thaling was worried, smiled and comforted him. Chapter 987. In the auction. With the support of the spiritual energy provided by the upper grade rank 3 spiritual vein, the incubation time of the beast egg will definitely be shortened by a lot. This is a good method. After hearing Yuhauran's plan, Thaling nodded in agreement, and he no longer continued to object to his method of taking back the clear sky bull egg. Glancing at Thaling in the sea of consciousness, Yuhauran thought for a while and didn't say anything more. In fact, the reason why he used this strategy to recapture the beast egg of the clear sky bull, in addition to being able to provide enough spiritual energy for hatching the beast egg with the upper grade rank 3 spiritual vein, was also because of Victor's time acceleration ability, which could also greatly shorten the incubation and growth time of the clear sky bull. However, considering that the pagoda spirit would soon fall into a deep sleep, Yuhauran did not want to distract it too much. Hence, he temporarily suppressed this thought. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just when Yuhauran closed his eyes and waited for the auction of the divine pure water to begin, Thaling, who had been monitoring the entire auction house with divine thought, unexpectedly sensed 4 powerful auras fluctuations. With his powerful divine thought, Thaling had been paying attention to the 4 powerful auras. After entering different private rooms, he told Yuhauran about the situation just now. After hearing Thaling's reminder, Yuhauran thought for a while, then asked Yunxiang, according to the standards of your Chamber of Commerce for different VIP treatment, what kind of people are the private rooms 2 to 5 for? According to Uncle Bien, for a Chamber of Commerce that is based on business like ours, forces like sex and families are easier to deal with. The only thing we are afraid of is those individual cultivators who come and go without a trace and are very powerful. It's just that different private rooms are for different guests, and it doesn't involve the secrets of the Chamber of Commerce, so Yunxiang didn't hide it at all. So, private rooms 2 to 5 are specially for those individual cultivators. However, there aren't many powerful individual cultivators in the southern region, and they rarely participate in the auctions organized by the Chamber of Commerce. So, sometimes some more influential sects and families will be arranged. This is also the reason why the Medicine King Valley was arranged to be in Private Room 3. Okay, I got it. Nodding, Yuhauran closed his eyes and continued to recall who the middle-aged expert who had reached the peak of the Second Tribulation quasi-martial venerable realm was. The divine pure water can assist in increasing the success rate of refining pills. It can directly increase the success rate of level 5 pills by 60% to 70%, level 4 pills by 40% to 50%, and level 3 pills by 20%. Just as Yuhauran was recalling the origins of the rogue cultivator in room 4, Bien Xingrue, who felt that it was about time, cleared his throat and began to explain the effects of the heavenly pure divine water. Other than increasing the success rate of refining pills, the divine pure water can also clear the impurities in the physical body and soul, increasing the strength of the physical body and soul. It can be said to be a miraculous elixir that increases a martial artist's potential. Furthermore, the divine pure water can purify one's soul and greatly increase one's mental state cultivation. It can also prevent the backlash of one's inner demons. Although the crowd already knew about the various powerful effects of the divine pure water, the atmosphere gradually heated up under Bien Xingrue's continuous introduction and mobilization. The starting price of the divine pure water is 100 million level 9 first-grade spirit stones. Each increment can't be less than 1 million spirit stones. The auction starts now. 150 million. 150 million wasn't a high price for the divine pure water, but the voice that had just bid had actually come from the hall that didn't have the ability to bid. This immediately attracted the attention of the crowd. Young Master Qingxiu. Lien Xingrue muttered to himself in displeasure when he saw the young man with a fan in his hand sitting in the middle of the hall with a bright smile on his face. So it's Xiandao School's most valued disciple, young Master Qingxiu. After hearing Bien Xingrue's mutterings, Some of the experts who came from the southern and central regions immediately thought of young Master Qingshu's origins and exclaimed in shock, "Hey! Why do you think young Master Qingshu is in the southern regions?" A martial emperor expert who liked to gossip couldn't help but ask his companion. "I think he's preparing to participate in the Hidden Dragon ranking battle in 9 months." His companion speculated confidently. "That's not right," the gossipy man asked in confusion. "Although the Xiandao School's mountain gate is close to the southern regions, it still belongs to the central regions sect. Even if he's participating in the Hidden Dragon ranking battle, he should be participating in the central region's Hidden Dragon Fort." Young Master Qingshu was originally a genius of the southern regions. However, he was chosen by the Xiandao School in the sect selection competition and became a disciple of the Central Region's Xiandao School. The gossipy man's companion couldn't help but roll his eyes at him and explain in a helpless tone. According to the Hidden Dragon ranking battle's birthplace requirements, young Master Qingshu can only participate in the Hidden Dragon ranking battle held in the southern regions. Looking at the cultured and refined young Master Qingsu sitting among the crowd in the hall, Yu Haoran chuckled and no longer paid attention to him. Because he knew that this young Master Qingsu belonged to the category of a miserable character who was simply not worth paying attention to. 200 million. Although young Master Qingshu's background wasn't small, the majority of the guests in the private rooms didn't pay attention to him at all. Therefore, the hall was silent for less than 20 seconds before Elder Ku Ying from private room 26 started to raise the price. 500 million. The quasi-martial revered ancestor from the Gu clan who had just entered private room 9 started to raise the price in a low voice. 800 million. 1 billion. The Feng family's ancestor from room 7 and the Gui family's ancestor from room 6 were less than a second apart from each other, and the bidding price had exceeded 1 billion. Young Master Qingshu's smile was instantly replaced by a gloomy expression. He stared fixedly at private room 26, and a frightening cold light flashed in his eyes. "Brat, others might be afraid of the Xiandao School behind you, but to this old man, even if I killed your master, Song Jianqing, your Xiandao School's sect master wouldn't dare to complain in the slightest." As a second tribulation quasi-martial revered expert, he was very sensitive to the fluctuations of killing intent. When young Master Qingshu wanted to kill him, he had already sensed it. Not to mention the fact that he had the number 1 Yushu temple behind him, even his own strength wasn't inferior to young Master Qingshu's master, Song Jianqing's. Therefore, how could he tolerate an early-stage martial saint junior wanting to kill him? Chapter 988. In the auction. My surname is Wan, and people have given me the nickname Old Man Withered Vulture. Old Man Withered Vulture revealed his name fearlessly when young Master Qingsu inquired about his background. "So it's Senior Wan. Junior Shi Chang greets Senior." Young Master Qingsu immediately rose to greet him when he heard that the owner of room 26 was Old Man Withered Vulture, whom even his sect did not want to provoke. Old Man Withered Vulture only snorted coldly and ignored him. He used the spirit stones he had just prepared to continue bidding for the pure heavenly water. 1 billion. 3 billion. A bid came from a private room 21 whose origins were unknown. 150 million. A bid came from room 16. Since the start of the auction, the guests in the 30 or so private rooms who had not made a bid all displayed their great courage and wealth in the face of the temptation of the pure heavenly water. But as the price continued to rise, the crowd gradually discovered a strange reality. The most wealthy guests present, Yu Haoran in room 1, and the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters in room 3, had not made a bid. Yunxiang, as one of the 7 great sacred waters of the Tianxian continent, the true value of the pure heavenly water is no less than that of an ordinary venerable level magic weapon. Therefore, the final price will definitely be above 3 billion. Yu Haoran patiently explained to Yunxiang why they had not made a bid. Now that the price has not reached the limit, there is no need to make a move for the time being. Moreover, you can analyze the wealth and temperament of these people through the tone of voice when each private room makes a bid. This will increase your knowledge and sharpen your analytical skills. Master, I understand. After hearing Yu Haoran's explanation, Yunxiang nodded and began to carefully analyze the tone of voice of each private room. 1 billion. The ancestor of the Gu clan from room 9 couldn't help but clench his fists under his sleeves. 1 billion wasn't a very high price for the Gu clan, which had been passed down for hundreds of years. However, he wasn't the only person in the Gu clan. There were tens of thousands of people in the Gu clan. The amount of spiritual stones that these people needed to consume every day was in the hundreds of thousands. Therefore, the Gu clan could only mobilize about 300,000 spiritual stones. As long as it exceeded this amount, the clan's development would be affected. 13 billion. 170 billion. The Feng clan and the Gue clan, who were similarly troubled by this problem, didn't offer as domineering a price as they did at the beginning. 2 billion. 21 billion. After more than 20 rounds of bidding, the price of the heavenly pure divine water was barely raised to 5 billion. This also meant that the price had reached the limit that everyone could bear. 3 billion. Just when everyone thought that the price of the auction would continue to rise by a few million or tens of millions, the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters from private room number 3 raised the price by 500 million. I'm going to vomit blood. The Valley of the Medicine Masters is still the wealthiest. Hearing the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters directly raise the price by 500 million, the gossipy man who had been asking about Master Qingshu's background couldn't help but sigh with envy and jealousy. After all, the head elder had just spent an astronomical amount of 3 billion spiritual stones to bid for the egg of the clear sky bull. Now, he had directly raised the price by 3 billion spiritual stones to bid for the heavenly pure divine water. Adding in the total, the price reached 3 billion. 3 billion spiritual stones was an astronomical figure that no one in the hall dared to imagine. Damn it! After hearing Gu Minglong's introduction of the owner of private room number 3, the ancestor of the Gu clan, who had wanted to take the risk, couldn't help but curse. In the end, he had no choice but to give up on bidding. After all, there was no power in the entire southern mountain range that could compete with the Valley of the Medicine Masters in terms of wealth. After directly raising the price by 500 million, the head elder stared nervously at private room number 1. Because in his opinion, in the entire auction, only Yu Haoran in private room number 1 could threaten him financially. 5 billion. But to the head elder's surprise, Yu Haoran, who he had been so nervous about, didn't raise the price. Instead, it was the guest from private room number 4 who directly raised the price by 500 million to announce his bid for the heavenly pure divine water. Damn it! Private rooms number 3 and 4 were side by side. It was impossible to see private room number 3, so the head elder cursed inwardly and followed up with a bid. 6 billion. 7 billion. In just a few seconds, the price of the heavenly pure divine water broke through the 4 billion mark and reached 1 billion amidst the continuous bidding. Moreover, this price came from private room number 4, which made the crowd speculate about the background of the owner of private room number 4. Head elder, we can no longer continue bidding. Seeing the head elder open his mouth to continue raising the price, the third elder hurriedly stopped him with a bitter smile. Other than the top elixirs used to save their lives, the rest of the elixirs were only exchanged for 3 billion spiritual stones. Including the 1 billion spiritual stones that Yu Haoran exchanged for the egg of the clear sky bull, they could only fork out 4 billion spiritual stones. Buguang, contact the people from the Heavenly Earth Chamber of Commerce. I want to know who the guy in private room number 4 is. Since they had no more food in their hands, there was no need to continue fighting. The head elder helplessly gave up the bid and ordered with a ferocious expression. Head elder, I understand. Nodding his head heavily, Su Buguang also resented the guy in private room number 4. Even the Valley of the Medicine Masters can't compete with me for the heavenly pure divine water. Seeing that the head elder had given up, the middle-aged man from private room number 4 was full of confidence and arrogance. 5 billion. But just as his confident and arrogant voice fell, he suddenly heard a higher bid. Sure enough, this kid is cheating me again. Hearing Yu Haoran from private room number 1 directly raise the price by 900 million to bid for the heavenly pure divine water, the head elder, who had been defeated several times, gritted his teeth and said, 5 billion. Through the glass in front of him, the middle-aged man from private room number 4 looked at private room number 1. His voice contained a hint of contempt as he raised the bid. 7 billion. Even though Yu Haoran had used up all the spirit stones that a clan had accumulated over hundreds of years, his expression did not change in the slightest just because the other party had offered a higher price. He had casually raised the price by 1.5 billion spirit stones. This showed that he was rich and overbearing, as well as his determination to obtain the heavenly pure divine water. After hearing Yu Haoran's sky-high price, whether it was the ordinary cultivators in the hall, the honored guests in the private rooms, or even the great elder and Bian Xingrui, they couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Chapter 989. In the auction. Could it be that he emptied all the spiritual stones in the Huang family's treasury? Bian Xingrui couldn't help but guess when he heard Yu Haoran's relaxed tone when he bid 7.5 billion spiritual stones. After all, no warrior would carry so many spiritual stones with them when they went out for training. Moreover, spiritual stones of level 4 and above were usually used to raise one's cultivation. Even for the heavenly pure holy water, it was difficult for them to use spiritual stones of level 4 and above so easily. Therefore, Bian Xingrui had such a guess in his heart. Friend, can you give the Gu Liang family some face and give up the bid for the heavenly pure holy water? Although he had just received a huge sum of spiritual stones, which was enough for him to continue bidding, he also heard the casual tone of his opponent when he bid just now. He knew that the other party really didn't lack spiritual stones and wanted to use his family's power to force the other party to give up. After all, he didn't want to spend more spiritual stones to bid for the heavenly pure holy water. The act of the owner of private room for using his power to oppress the other party instantly aroused the disgust of countless people present. Whether it was the local tyrants of Guangling City, the Gue family, the Feng family, the Gu family, or the Medicine King Valley, which enjoyed the title of the Holy Land of Alchemy. When faced with an auction item, they would either think of a way to gather more spiritual stones or choose to give up directly. They had never thought of using their power to oppress others. Guest in private room 4, you've gone too far. Bian Xingrui questioned with a gloomy face. Facing the oppression of the Gu Liang family's expert, the crowd now felt disgusted. However, to Bian Xingrui, who was in charge of the auction, he was furious. This was because the other party's action of oppressing others had seriously broken the rules of the auction and was equivalent to challenging the authority of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce. If he didn't extinguish the other party's arrogance today, then his carefully prepared plan to expand his business in the southern mountain range would completely fail. Ha ha! In the face of Bian Xingrui's questioning, the expert from the Gu Liang family laughed lightly. He didn't feel the slightest bit of guilt or embarrassment. Elder Bian, I'm sorry for my rudeness. Although the other party seemed to be apologizing, his actions were actually even more contemptuous. Bian Xingrui was immediately enraged. Just as he was about to order the powerhouses of the Chamber of Commerce to take action, Yu Haoran's contemptuous insults came from Private Room Number 1. The Gu Liang clan is nothing. What the hell? The Gu Liang clan, one of the three great forces of the southern region, which had been passed down for more than 100,000 years, was not even worth a fart in front of Yu Haoran. This not only stunned everyone present, but also made Gu Liang Yueqiang instantly furious. Brat, I don't care who's behind you. You're dead for daring to humiliate my Gu Liang clan. Trash, before you threaten me, you'd better find out who I am first. Yu Haoran replied in an even more domineering manner, not fearing the other party's threat at all. Then, under the admiring gaze of Yunxiang, Yu Haoran stood up and walked straight to the transparent glass. His tone was full of disappointment as he commented. The Gu Liang clan, as one of the top forces in the southern region, chose to stand by and do nothing when the strange beasts of the Hengduan mountain range were slaughtering our human warriors. This shows that you're a bunch of cowards who are afraid of death. Now, in the bidding for the divine pure water, you're using your power to bully others. This shows that you're a bunch of selfish, insidious villains. At this point, the disappointment in his tone was replaced by contempt and anger as he spoke sarcastically. You're both timid and selfish. To think that you still have the face to say that you're from the Gu Liang clan. If I were you, I would have broken my own heart and destroyed my own soul to avoid polluting the fresh air of the Tianxian continent because of my own existence. Well said. After hearing Yu Haoran's sorrowful yet passionate comments, the gossipy man in the hall couldn't help but cheer. You're courting death. Although he didn't know who the owner of the number 1 private room was, he must have a powerful background to be able to be arranged to enter the private room that originally belonged to the three forces. Therefore, although Gu Liang Yueqiang's words were powerful, he didn't dare to act rashly. However, he didn't have the slightest fear of the ordinary warriors in the hall who were cheering just now. If you dare to attack him, don't even think about walking out of the auction house alive today. However, just as Gu Liang Yueqiang was about to kill the gossipy man, he immediately heard Yu Haoran's murderous threat. Is that so? In the face of Yu Haoran's murderous threat, Gu Liang Yueqiang sneered and asked in return. He didn't stop at all and directly opened the door of the private room. Leaving the private room to attack was not because Gu Liang Yueqiang was afraid of the earthly paradise, but because the private room that could block divine thought would affect the accuracy of his martial skills. According to what you said just now, in the entire southern region, if I, Yu Haoran, want to kill you, even if the peerless experts in the martial venerable realm of your Gu Liang family wake up, they can't stop me. Just as Gu Liang Yueqiang stepped out of the private room and was about to kill the gossipy man, he heard Yu Haoran's chilling threat. You are Yu Haoran. Gu Liang Yueqiang, who had just raised his arm, stopped in midair. He slowly turned his head and asked with some difficulty. Yu Haoran, for the Gu Liang family, represented a period of shame. When the warriors of the Hengduan Mountains fought their way out and escaped from the mountains, Yu Haoran separately sent a request to the Gu Liang family and the Run family to jointly exterminate the exotic beasts of the Hengduan Mountains in front of hundreds of warriors in the martial sage and martial royal realm. The strength of the exotic beasts of the Hengduan Mountains was well known to the world. It was normal for the three major forces of the southern region to choose to stand by and watch in consideration of their own strength. However, Yu Haoran made a blood oath with the rules of heaven and successfully exterminated 11 exotic beasts of the quasi-venerable realm, which gave the Gu Liang family a resounding slap in the face. The Ren family had always followed the code of conduct of seclusion. It was normal for them not to respond to Yu Haoran's request, and the world would not blame them too much. Yu Haoran was not only a citizen of the great Emperor Qin's kingdom, but also the Emperor Qin's most valued son-in-law. Not only did he not bring any bad influence to the great Emperor Qin's kingdom, but he also greatly increased the prestige of the kingdom of Qin. Only for the Gu Liang family, who paid attention to high-profile matters, Yu Haoran's actions caused the prestige that they had accumulated for hundreds of thousands of years to be instantly damaged. Although Yu Haoran's actions made the Gu Liang family gnash their teeth in hatred, they could only choose to endure for the time being before the ancestor of the martial venerable realm woke up and the three-third tribulation quasi-martial venerable's elders had not fully recovered their strength for the time being. After all, Yu Haoran's strength was not inferior to that of a second tribulation quasi-martial venerable when he exterminated 11 exotic beasts of the quasi-venerable realm. Moreover, he had the support of Emperor Qin, who had reached the third tribulation quasi-martial venerable realm and was holding an emperor realm sword. Chapter 990. In the auction. You, as the saying goes, leave some leeway when you do things, and we'll meet again in the future. How dare you insult our Gu Liang family like this? Sooner or later, we'll make you regret it. Gu Liang Yueqiang did not have the face to stay any longer after he had insulted him with such disgusting words. However, when he thought about how the ancestor of the martial honored realm would wake up after the hidden dragon roll contest, Gu Liang Yueqiang threatened him fiercely before he left the auction. As the saying goes, dragons give birth to dragons, phoenixes give birth to phoenixes, and mice give birth to sons that can dig holes. Facing Gu Liang Yueqiang, who was walking away from the auction, Yu Haoran knew why he was so confident in his threat just now, so he directly used the same common saying to fight back. From you cowardly juniors, this prince consort already knows that the ancestor of the Gu Liang clan is definitely not a hero. When he wakes up and receives my heroic spirit, he will be like you juniors, hiding in the family like a coward and not daring to show his face. Puff! Gu Liang Yueqiang, who had just walked to the hall on the first floor, spat out a few mouthfuls of blood. His face was pale and he shouted ferociously. Yu Haoran, the Gu Liang family will fight you to the death. I'll be waiting. He had already been humiliated to such an extent. Even Gu Liangyue, who was a second tribulation quasi-martial saint, did not dare to risk his life. Yu Haoran clearly did not care about his earlier threat. Seeing Gu Liang Yueqiang stumbling out of the auction, the crowd looked at the number 1 private room with a different expression. With just a verbal confrontation, Gu Liang Yueqiang, who was a second tribulation quasi-martial honored realm cultivator, spat out blood in anger. It was not inferior to a direct confrontation. This made the crowd have a new understanding of Yu Haoran. Master Yu, because Gu Liang Yueqiang broke the rules of the auction, his final bid is invalid. The bidding price of 5 billion can be considered the final transaction price of the heavenly pure divine water, Bian Xingrui said to Yu Haoran after taking a deep breath and calming down his emotions. Other than the reason just now, he directly waived the 2 billion spirit stones because he was grateful to Yu Haoran for suppressing and driving away Ouyang Yueqiang. Not only did he protect the normal operation of the auction, but he also allowed his plan to continue smoothly. A mere 2 billion spirit stones is just a bunch of useless numbers in this prince consort's eyes. Just treat it as a gift to your chamber of commerce. In response to Bian Xingrui's gratitude, Yu Haoran chuckled and shook his head. Then, he said in a tone that made everyone faint, 2 billion. 2 billion 9th tier first grade spirit stones. How could he just throw them away like that? The domineering aura that Yu Haoran had just displayed not only left everyone speechless, but also completely extinguished any thoughts of continuing to compete with him. Yu Haoran, this prodigal boy, that's 2 billion 9th tier first grade spirit stones. In the face of giving away 2 billion spirit stones at will, everyone at the scene felt speechless, but Thowing in the sense of perception criticized in exasperation. So many spirit stones can be used to buy the top materials for refining Emperor Realm celestial devices. How could you just throw them away like that? Thowing, when have you ever seen me, Yu Haoran, suffer a loss? In the face of Thowing's criticism, Yu Haoran asked back. Could it be that giving away 2 billion spiritual stones will bring us some benefits? The tower spirit asked in confusion. Of course. Yu Haoran explained with a smile. First, it shows that I, Yu Haoran, have amazing financial resources and can win the last auction item at the lowest price. Second, I can gain the friendship of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce and share part of their intelligence system. I see you're really cunning. After hearing Yu Haoran's explanation, Thaling could not help but praise. In this regard, Yu Haoran directly threw him a supercilious look, and then began to prepare the 7 billion spirit stones for the pure heavenly water. After the transaction of spirit stones and pure heavenly water, Bian Xingrui did not immediately display and auction the 8th auction item. Instead, he put his hands behind his back, with a faint smile on his face, and a posture of preparing to speak. Everyone, Heavenly World, has been in Tianxian continent for a total of 3,998 years. Although we have always preached our own style, there is not much difference between us and other chambers of commerce. But starting from today, starting from Guangling City in the southern region, starting from this auction, we have decided to make a change. At this point, Bian Xingrui suddenly took out a wooden box about 1.5 meters long and more than 30 centimeters wide from his storage ring. The wooden box was covered with talismans to prevent the aura from leaking out. In the future, Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce's auctions in the southern region will not only auction fine items, but also the number of auction items will always be 8. As Bian Xingrui's voice fell, there was a sudden uproar of discussion at the scene, mainly because his statement just now was too shocking and completely violated the business tradition of the Chamber of Commerce. Even Yu Haoran, who knew in advance that there would only be 8 auction items, was also stunned by Bian Xingrui's statement just now. Uncle Bian, what are you doing? Yunxiang was also shocked. She directly stood up, walked quickly to the transparent glass, and then questioned with a puzzled expression. After closing his eyes and pondering for a while, Yu Haoran could not help but sigh. What a brilliant method! Master, what the hell is going on? After hearing Yu Haoran's praise, Yunxiang quickly turned her head and asked, attracting attention with a maverick change, causing a sensation with the gimmick of limiting 8 auction items, and then serving the top powerhouses with 8 fine treasures. This method is really brilliant. Also through the transparent glass, looking at Bian Xingrui with a faint smile on his face, Yu Haoran explained with appreciation. Yunxiang, it seems that your Uncle Bian is really a genius in business. Shaking her head, Yunxiang indicated that she did not understand his explanation just now. Yunxiang, this kind of business method can't be explained clearly by words. It will only show results over a certain period of time. Withdrawing his gaze from Bian Xingrui, Yu Haoran reminded Yunxiang. Anyway, you have to stay in the southern region with Elder Bian for a long time, so in addition to cultivation, pay more attention to the changes in the business of the Chamber of Commerce, and soon you will know how powerful your Uncle Bian's means are. Seeing that everyone at the scene had almost digested his statement just now, Bian Xingrui put away the smile on his face, and then uncovered the charm on the wooden box. However, what made everyone feel more strange was that every time a charm was removed, Bian Xingrui would stick it to his chest. After all the charms on the edges of the wooden box were removed, Bian Xingrui took a deep breath, then reached out and slowly opened the wooden box. Chapter 991. In the auction. This is the aura of an inferior venerable realm weapon. Everyone in the private room stood up after the terrifying aura emanated from the wooden box. They watched in shock as the gap grew wider and wider, revealing the type of venerable realm weapon in the wooden box. It was a sword that emitted a pure white light. Crazy. The Chamber of Commerce in Heavenly Earth has gone completely crazy. They're actually willing to auction off an venerable realm weapon. The first elder cried out in a daze when he saw the inferior venerable realm's sword emitting a pure white light in the wooden box. In fact, the first elder was not the only one who had completely lost his composure. Even Su Buguang was looking at the inferior venerable realm sword in disbelief. Sigh. Yu Haoran was also shocked when he saw that the last item was an undamaged inferior venerable realm sword. He could not help but sigh. Master, are you not satisfied with an inferior venerable realm weapon? Yunxiang asked in confusion when she heard Yu Haoran's sigh. Xiang your master's natal sword is still only at the peak of the king stage. How could I possibly dislike an undamaged venerable stage sword? Yu Haoran shook his head and replied in a somewhat unhappy manner. Then why did you sigh just now? Yunxiang asked even more confusedly. Yu Haoran glanced at Yunxiang angrily and explained in a rather annoyed tone, 2 billion spiritual stones. I gave it to your Uncle Bien for free. If the final auction item wasn't an exalted realm sword, even if it was a treasure of equal value to an exalted realm sword, his generous act of gifting spirit stones would have made everyone give up on competing with him for it. However, an inferior venerable realm sword was different. An inferior venerable realm weapon not only symbolized the heritage of a sect or clan, but also the foundation that could be passed down for thousands of years. For example, the 100 Qi Gate. After nearly 100 years of internal strife, the overall strength of the 100 Qi Gate had fallen to that of a third-rate sect. However, the affiliated third-rate sects and family forces did not dare to act rashly. What they were really afraid of was the saint-state celestial device that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years in the 100 Qi Gate. It was an intact saint-state celestial device. On the other hand, the Gui clan, Feng clan, and Gu clan of Guangling City would absolutely mobilize the forces of their entire clans to fight for a low-grade Exalt Realm sword. This was because a quasi-martial Honorable Realm elite could unleash 30% of the lower Honorable Realm sword's power and could easily kill a third Tribulation Peak quasi-martial Honorable Realm elite. The terrifying aura emanated by the low-grade Exalt Realm sword caused the entire auction area to instantly fall into an extremely silent state. Even the slightest sound of footsteps could be heard clearly. So, the sound of heavy breathing in the room caused the crowd that had been forced to the entrance of the auction to know that a low-grade Exalt Realm sword might be auctioned for an astronomical price. Although there was the protection of the sealing aura charm, Bien Xingrui, who was the closest to the low-grade Exalt Realm sword, had to bear the strongest aura emanating from the sword. This caused him to gradually find it difficult to breathe. His right hand, which was holding the wooden box flat, also gradually felt weak. Seeing that the crowd had clearly felt the power of the low-grade Exalt Realm sword, Bien Xingrui quickly closed the wooden box and quickly put the sealing aura on his body back on the box's seam. As the terrifying aura emanating from the low-grade Exalt Realm sword disappeared, the crowd that had been forced to the entrance of the auction area returned to the hall. Elder Bien, are you sure that you are auctioning a low-grade Exalt Realm sword? The Gui clan ancestor from room number 6 asked in disbelief. Without the pressure of the low-grade Exalt Realm sword, Bien Xingrui, who had regained his confidence, replied with a smile, Senior Gui, the foundation of the Chamber of Commerce is integrity. Since I have already taken out a low-grade Exalt Realm sword, it will be the finale item. How can I go back on my word? Elder Bien, can you postpone the auction for a while? After getting confirmation from Bien Xingrui, the Gu clan ancestor from room number 9 asked. Senior Gu, I can only postpone it for an hour at most. Otherwise, it will violate the rules of the auction and ruin the reputation of the heavenly world. Bien Xingrui reminded him with a serious expression. In fact, Bien Xingrui was willing to wait for a day or a month, let alone an hour. This was because the longer he waited, the more spiritual stones the crowd would have to prepare. The final auction price would be higher and it would also attract the attention of the top powers. But he could not do that. Just as he had explained earlier, It would ruin the reputation of the Chamber of Commerce and offend many people at the scene. It would not be good for the Chamber of Commerce's business in the southern region. That was enough. For the Gui clan, Feng clan, and Gu clan who had their roots in Guangling City, an hour was enough for them to prepare the spiritual stones for the auction. For some forces and experts who did not have their roots in Guangling City, they could use their methods to mobilize a large number of spiritual stones in a short time. They could also prepare enough spiritual stones for the auction. Master, how about I borrow some spiritual stones from Uncle Bien? Seeing that Yu Haoran's face was getting darker and darker, Yunxiang cautiously reminded him. Shaking his head, Yu Haoran closed his eyes and began to check all his spiritual stones reserves. Spiritual stones of level 4 and above were prepared to be used to improve cultivation. It was necessary to break through to the martial sage realm. They could not be used no matter what. The remaining spiritual stones added up to a total of more than 27 billion. According to the estimation of the total amount of spirit stones in the Huang clan's treasury, the Gui clan, the Feng clan, and the Gu clan were the biggest threats to him. So, they could only mobilize about 20 billion spirit stones. So, they posed a certain threat to him. However, the threat wasn't that big. However, the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters in private room number 3, the withered vulture elder in private room number 26, and a few others who had not participated in the auction. Their wealth far exceeded that of the 5 great clans of Guangling City. This made him feel that he did not have much confidence in the amount of spiritual stones he had in reserve. Guang, use all the best escape talismans and rush back to the Valley of the Medicine Masters immediately. Use the spiritual stones in the valley's reserve. No matter what, you must obtain the lower-level Venerable Realm Sword. The head elder in private room number 3 reminded Su Buguang solemnly after handing over all his best escape talismans to him. Head elder, don't worry. I will rush back before the lower-level Venerable Realm Sword is auctioned. Su Buguang nodded heavily as he held the 8 best escape talismans in his hand. Looks like I need to use the special transportation weapon given to me by the sect. The withered vulture elder stood up and walked to the transparent glass. He looked at the wooden box that Bien Xingrue was holding with a determined expression on his face. I never thought that a lower-level Venerable Realm Sword would appear in a mere ordinary auction. Looks like I'll have to use my private collection. In private room 31, there was a handsome young man with a serious expression on his face. Chapter 992. In the auction. Yu Haoran, why don't you sell some of the elixirs and weapons that you don't need for the time being to Bien Xingrue in exchange for more spirit stones for the auction? Thaling suggested when he saw Yu Haoran's darkening face. Not enough. Yu Haoran shook his head as he watched Su Buguang leave room number 3. He knew that unless he traded for some of the top treasures, he would not be able to do anything. Otherwise, he would not be a match for the Valley of the Medicine Masters with those elixirs, weapons, elixirs, materials for refining weapons, mental cultivation methods, and martial techniques that he did not need for the time being. Furthermore, he had a feeling that there was someone else in the room who was not inferior to him in terms of strength and wealth. Bang, bang, bang! Just as Yu Haoran was racking his brains on how to gather more spirit stones in a short period of time, someone knocked on the door of the room. After receiving Yu Haoran's nod of approval, Yunxiang stepped forward to open the door. Elder Yin, why are you here? Yu Haoran asked in confusion when he saw that the person who stepped in was Yen Fenghua, who they had just parted with not long ago. I'm here to deliver the spirit stones to Grandmaster Yu. Yen Fenghua smiled as he handed the storage ring to Yu Haoran. Grandmaster Yu, among the 5 major families in Guangling City, our Yen family is the weakest and occupies the least territory. Therefore, we receive the least amount of income. Under the condition that we ensure the normal operations of the family, we can only take out 4 billion level 9, first-grade spirit stones. That's too expensive. Yu Haoran was touched when he saw that Yan Fenghua had delivered 4 billion spirit stones at such a crucial time. He could not bear to see the Yan family fall into such dire straits because of him. In response, Yan Fenghua only smiled, then turned around and left private room number 1. Seeing Yan Fenghua leave, Yu Haoran felt a surge of warmth in his heart. He decided to listen to Thaling's suggestion and fight for one last time. It would be best if he could obtain a low-grade Exalted Realm Sword. That would be another life-saving trump card. However, even if he failed in the end, it could only mean that he was not fated to obtain a lower honorable stage sword. Thus, he did not have any regrets. But just as he got up and was about to leave the room, a young girl in a white dress with delicate skin and outstanding looks walked in. "Master Yu, this is a thank-you gift from Elder Bien." After leaving a storage ring, the girl in the white dress turned and left the room. Yu Haoran scanned the storage ring with his spiritual will and found that there was only 1 9th-grade spirit stone inside. Yu Haoran could not help but fall into deep thought. After pondering for a full 3 minutes, Yu Haoran suddenly laughed. Along with the smile on his face, a relaxed feeling made him return to his armchair. Then, he watched the final battle between the low-grade Venerable Realm Swords like he was watching a show. "Master, what's wrong with you?" The drastic change in his expression and aura made Yunxiang very puzzled. "Nothing." Yu Haoran shook his head at Yunxiang and indicated that he was fine. He could refuse to answer Yunxiang, but in the face of Thaling's interrogation in his mind, Yu Haoran had no choice but to explain. "Thaling Bien Xingrui gave me a 9th-grade spirit stone to remind me not to participate in the upcoming auction of the low-grade Exalted Realm Sword." "Why?" Thaling asked, puzzled. "I think the low-grade Exalted Realm Sword must have come from a shady background. It could very well cause a lot of trouble." Yu Haoran guessed. "Yu Haoran, according to my understanding of you, you shouldn't give up the low-grade Exalted Realm Sword because of some trouble." Thaling, who thought that he understood Yu Haoran, continued to ask. "I think the trouble should come from a fully awakened martial venerable who can come to the world." Yu Haoran speculated. After hearing Yu Haoran's speculation, Thaling fell into deep thought. Although the current environment still restricted peerless martial venerables from coming to the world, if a martial venerable chose to seal a part of his strength or use a special secret treasure, he could still wander the world. As long as he did not take the risk of using strength beyond the martial venerable realm. Yu Haoran, according to your speculation, the low-grade Exalted Realm Sword belongs to a martial venerable. Then, isn't the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce, which dares to auction a celestial weapon, afraid of being retaliated by a martial venerable? Thaling asked doubtfully after hearing Yu Haoran's explanation. No. Thaling's question completely confirmed Yu Haoran's speculation, and he explained with a smile. Because the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce has nothing to do with the low-grade Exalted Realm Sword. They are only responsible for the auction and take a percentage of the bidding price after the auction. Therefore, if a peerless martial venerable wants to find trouble, he will only find the person who entrusted the auction of the sword, and not the Chamber of Commerce. I see. Yu Haoran's explanation cleared Thaling's doubts, and he finally understood why the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce was so generous to auction a low-grade Exalted Realm Sword that could be used as a heritage and inheritance. It was because the low-grade Exalted Realm Sword did not belong to them, and they could not keep it. Since he had decided to give up the auction, there was no need to rack his brains to gather spiritual stones. Yu Haoran, who was free, started to think about his next itinerary. According to Shin Hokong's estimation of his injuries, he would need about 7 days to recover. In other words, he would need to stay in Guangling City for another 7 days. His current alchemy cultivation was too low, and he needed to break through to the Great Grandmaster realm before he could deduce the formula of the Yin-Yang Life Soul Elixir. It was difficult to quickly understand and master the inherited martial techniques of the witch ancestors' bloodline through hard work. Only through continuous battles could one quickly improve and understand. After thinking about it, Yu Haoran decided to make use of Victor's ability to accelerate time to raise his cultivation and physical body grade to level 10 complete realm as soon as possible. He would strive to break through to the martial sage realm before Thaling fell asleep. At the same time, he would use these 7 days to guide Yunxiang in the cultivation of the way of poison. After he left, he would not be able to return to Guangling City for a few years because of the hidden dragon roll battle. Okay. Thaling nodded in agreement when he heard Yu Haoran's arrangement for the next 7 days. After all, the sooner Yu Haoran broke through to the martial sage realm, the sooner he would be able to rest and recover from his spiritual injuries. Then, he would be able to wake up and help Yu Haoran. Many experts who had left the auction hall returned to their private rooms in surprise. At the same time, Bian Xingrui, who had also finished dealing with a large number of transactions, returned to the high platform. After glancing at the 36 private rooms, Bian Xingrui's gaze finally stopped at private room number 1. A trace of worry flashed across his eyes. He cleared his throat and began to introduce the low-grade Exalted Realm Sword, its origin, and the bidding price. The 9-star soul-chasing sword is a complete low-grade Exalted Realm Sword. It came from the martial Venerable Elder Jiuxing, whose whereabouts are unknown. Chapter 993. In the auction. The auction for the 9-star soul-chasing sword begins now. As Bian Xingrui announced the start of the auction for the lower Honorable Realm Sword, there was an intense bidding war. 2 billion. 3 billion. 5 billion. In less than 30 seconds, the price of the lower Honorable Realm Sword had exceeded 10 billion. Moreover, the price did not slow down at all. It wasn't until the bidding price reached 16 billion that the rapidly rising price gradually slowed down. 18 billion. After the old ancestor of the Gu family from private room number 9 shouted out his bid, he looked at private rooms number 1 and 3 with a serious expression. Since the start of the auction for the lower Honorable Realm Sword, Yu Haoran and the Great Elder, who were the wealthiest, had yet to make a move. This meant that the price of the sword could exceed 20 billion. If the starting bid of the other party really started from 20 billion, then the Gu clan, Gui clan, and Feng clan would more or less withdraw from the following auction. 19 billion. 20 billion. Just as the Gu clan's ancestor finished his bid, the Feng clan's ancestor and the Gui clan's ancestor both raised the price to 20 billion. At this point, most of the people in the private rooms had no choice but to give up on the auction. Everyone's eyes were on private rooms 1 and 3, looking forward to the battle between Yu Haoran and the Great Elder. Master Yu, I hope that you can discover the danger of bidding for the lower Honorable Realm Sword through the level 9 spiritual stone that I'm giving you. He looked at Bian Xingrui in room 1 and prayed in his heart. 21 billion. Just as Bian Xingrui was praying in his heart and everyone was looking at rooms 1 and 3, there was a sudden bidding war. However, to everyone's surprise, the bidder was neither Yu Haoran nor the Great Elder. It was old man Kujio from room 26. Where did this guy get so many spiritual stones? Seeing that the bidder was actually Elder Withered Vulture, who was a rogue cultivator, everyone present could not help but have the same doubts in their hearts. Yunxiang, in the future, if you come into conflict with Elder Withered Vulture during your training, if you are not confident that you can kill him in one blow, choose to flee immediately. After hearing Elder Withered Vulture's bid, Yu Haoran knew that he must have contacted the Yushu Temple and obtained the support of the Yushu Temple's higher-ups. He reminded Yunxiang with a solemn expression as he recalled the various methods that the Withered Vulture Elder possessed in his previous life. Okay. Yunxiang nodded and glanced at room 26. 30 billion. After Elder Withered Vulture made his bid, the scene fell silent for almost a minute. Seeing that Bian Xingrue was about to start the countdown, the Grand Elder didn't continue waiting and directly raised the price of the low-grade Exalt Realm Sword to 30 billion. This caused everyone present to suck in a breath of cold air, and at the same time, a few martial artists with average psychological quality directly fainted. 30 billion. If all of it were exchanged for 9th-level spiritual stones, it would be enough to pile up into a mountain that was almost 1,000 meters high. Such a huge amount of spiritual stones was an astronomical figure that these ordinary martial artists would not dare to believe. 35 billion. Elder Withered Vulture did not seem to care about the Grand Elder's sudden bid. Although the Valley of the Medicine Masters did not lack spiritual stones, the Yushu Temple behind him did not lack high-grade spiritual stones either. Furthermore, in order to help him successfully obtain the low-grade Exalt Realm Sword and exchange it for the Yin-Yang Life Soul Elixir from Yu Haoran, the Deputy Palace Master of the Underground Palace had used the means of the stars to send him a spiritual meridian. A 7th-level spiritual meridian was enough to easily suppress everyone present. Elder Withered Vulture's performance in the previous bids was completely different from his performance in the previous bids. Not only did it arouse the suspicions of the crowd, but it also attracted the attention of Yu Haoran. Thaling, in your current state, if you continue to use the possession technique, will it speed up the duration of your deep slumber? Combining his understanding of the Yushu Temple in his previous life, Yu Haoran felt that the Yushu Temple might have used some special means to send Elder Withered Vulture a spiritual meridian. He could not help but ask, "If it is to deal with Elder Withered Vulture, I will immediately fall into a deep slumber after the possession technique ends," Thaling warned in a slightly exaggerated manner, not knowing the intention of Yu Haoran's interrogation. In fact, Thaling did not want any conflict between Yu Haoran and the Yushu Temple before he fell into a deep slumber. He wanted to avoid an uncontrollable situation. Then forget it. No matter how precious a 3rd-level spiritual meridian was, it could not be compared to Thaling, who was in a clear state, so Yu Haoran immediately extinguished the idea of taking advantage of the situation. 40 billion. Yu Haoran had suppressed the Yin-Yang Life Soul Pill and Heavenly Pure Divine Water because he did not have enough spiritual stones on hand. Now that the 3rd Elder had brought back a large number of spiritual stones with the tracking talisman, the 1st Elder's confidence had increased, and he planned to ruthlessly suppress Yu Haoran once. Now that Yu Haoran had not made a bid, how could the 1st Elder be scared off by a mere rogue cultivator? Therefore, the 1st Elder also increased the price by 5 billion to show his determination to not give up on the lower Venerable Realm Sword. 45 billion. However, to the 1st Elder's surprise, Elder Withered Vulture was not to be outdone and increased the price by 5 billion as well. This made the 1st Elder extremely angry, and he continued to increase the price by 5 billion to retaliate against Elder Withered Vulture. 50 billion. Hearing the 1st Elder directly bid 50 billion, Yu Haoran looked through the transparent glass at Bian Xingrue, who was overjoyed, and exclaimed to Yunxiang, "Yunxiang, Heavenly World and your Uncle Bian will definitely be famous this time." The bidding price of 50 billion was enough to rank in the top 30 in the history of the auction, and it was also enough to be recorded in the annals of history and passed down to future generations. Moreover, according to the situation at the scene, the bidding price was far more than 50 billion, and the final price might rank in the top 20. "Master, how much do you think the final price of the lower Venerable Realm Sword will reach?" Yunxiang, who was also happy, could not help but want to consider Yu Haoran for the last time. If there are no accidents, it should be more than 80 billion, but the specific number cannot be estimated. Yu Haoran shook his head and replied. As his cultivation increased, his strength increased, and his influence increased, causing the fate of his previous life to completely change. For example, the strange beasts of the Hengduan Mountains besieged the elite experts of the human race, which had never happened in his previous life. Chapter 994. In the auction. Today, the auction that was being held in Guangling City had also never happened in his previous life. Therefore, with the change in fate, Yu Haoran was unable to predict every item that would be auctioned, as well as the final price of each item, like when he had participated in the Heavenly Fragrance Pavilion's auction in Xianyang City. 55 billion. Faced with the Great Elder's attack, Elder Withered Vulture did not hesitate and continued to raise the price by 5 billion. 60 billion. The Great Elder gritted his teeth and continued to attack. Frowning slightly, Elder Withered Vulture's eyes flashed with a frightening cold light as he looked at Room 3. Although the spiritual meridian was the source of spiritual stones, there was a limit to the output. For example, the level 7 spiritual meridian that the Yushu Temple had given him could only produce less than 70 billion level 9 first-grade spiritual stones. Furthermore, he had to set aside a portion of spiritual stones to exchange for the Yin-Yang Life Spirit Elixir from Yu Haoran. He also had to use a large amount of spiritual stones to purchase top-notch elixirs to help him successfully pass through the body tribulation and become a third tribulation quasi-martial honorable. 61 billion. Elder Withered Vulture, who had his reservations, did not have the courage he had at the start of the auction. Although he continued to bid, the increase in price had decreased by 80%. You've gone soft. Seeing that Elder Withered Vulture had only raised the price by 1 billion this time, the Great Elder knew that his spiritual stone reserve had reached its limit and could not help but mock him. Let me tell you, a man can be bad at everything, but he cannot go soft. Elder Withered Vulture continued to provoke him. Come on, Withered Vulture, harden up and do it quickly. Haha. Elder Withered Vulture was so excited that he did not hold back his provocation. Yu Haoran was stunned for a moment, then he could not help but laugh maniacally. Originally, because of the constantly rising price, the crowd was completely shocked and numb. They did not think carefully about Elder Withered Vulture's slip of the tongue. However, when they were awakened by Yu Haoran's maniacal laughter, they immediately thought of the meaning of the slip of the tongue and could not help but laugh. However, fearful of the strength of the Valley of the Medicine Masters and Elder Withered Vulture, everyone present could only laugh secretly. This made Yu Haoran's maniacal laughter even more prominent. Yu Haoran, shut up! Yu Haoran's wild laughter and the others' laughter made the first elder realize his slip of the tongue. Immediately, he angrily shouted at Yu Haoran. Master! Although she was an innocent girl, living in the special chamber of commerce like heavenly earth, Yunxiang also understood the meaning of the first elder's slip of the tongue just now. She suddenly blushed and complained to Yu Haoran. I'm sorry, Great Elder, I'm really sorry. I lost control of my mind just now, causing me to lose control of my emotions. Yu Haoran knew that his wild laughter was too rude, so he hurriedly apologized. However, the more he thought about it, the more amused he felt. Even when he apologized, his tone was still filled with ridicule. Humph! In response, the first elder could not help but coldly snort before continuing to raise the price. 70 billion! Bang! Just as the first elder directly raised the price by 9 billion, the sound of a table and chair shattering came from private room 26. Great Elder, I, Elder Withered Vulture, will definitely lead the experts of the Yushu Temple in the future and flatten your Valley of the Medicine Masters. Elder Withered Vulture's eyes were filled with murderous intent as he stared at private room 3. Yu Haoran, it's your turn. After waiting for a full 2 minutes, the first elder found that Elder Withered Vulture had no intention of continuing to raise the price. He took the initiative to provoke Yu Haoran. Great Elder, the level of the lower Venerable Realm Sword is too low. I don't care about it, so I won't blindly participate. In the face of the first elder's provocation, Yu Haoran replied in an even more arrogant tone. Of course, if you feel lonely because you don't have the other party, I can play with you, as long as you can bear the price of losing the bid. Then you. Yu Haoran's arrogant reply made the first elder immediately want to continue to provoke him, but he was quickly stopped by Su Buguang. Great Elder, the number of spirit stones we have is limited. Let's not fight with this Yu Gai for the time being. After hearing Su Buguang's reminder, the first elder took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He stared at Bian Xingrui on the high platform and waited for him to start the countdown. Now, are there any friends who want to continue bidding? As if he felt the first elder's gaze, Bian Xingrui reminded him respectfully. If not, I'm going to start the countdown. After waiting for about 30 seconds and confirming that no one wanted to continue bidding, Bian Xingrui began the countdown. 70 billion going once. 70 billion going twice. 70 billion. 80 billion. When Bian Xingrui's countdown reached the third time, the first elder was ready to accept the fruit of victory. Just when everyone present, including Yu Haoran, thought that the lower-grade Venerable Realm sword would belong to the first elder, there was a sudden bid. Moreover, it was a 10 billion increase. Young man, who are you? Judging from the voice just now, the other party was obviously a young man. This made the first elder, who was ready to accept the fruit of victory, completely lose his mind. He ignored the auction's rules and questioned the young man who had just bid. Bian Xingrui did not care about this, nor did he stop him. After all, the first elder did not deliberately break the auction's rules. Moreover, he also wanted to know the background of the young man who had bid 80 billion. You are not qualified to know who I am. In the face of the first elder's question, the young man in private room 31 replied in a calm but arrogant tone. Ha ha! After hearing the young man's arrogant reply, the first elder, who had calmed down, suddenly laughed wildly. Young man, I've seen arrogant people, such as Yu Haoran, but I've never seen someone as arrogant and ignorant as you. The first elder questioned coldly after his wild laughter ended. Whether it's the Emperor Qin of the Great Qin Kingdom or the Master of the Heavenly Palace of the Yushu Temple, they all have to respectfully address me as Great Master when they see me. Young man, are you more honorable than the Emperor Qin and the Master of the Heavenly Palace? If you're the Master of the Heavenly Palace, you're qualified to know my background. But Emperor Qin? The young man in private room 31 said arrogantly. He's not qualified. Raising his eyebrows slightly, Yu Haoran directly asked Thowling to use his powerful divine thought to check the appearance of the young man in private room 31. He wanted to see if he had any impression of this young man in his previous life. However, the result was that the pagoda spirit's divine telekinesis could not enter room 31 at all. This caused him to become extremely vigilant. Yunxiang, help me check the background of the owner of private room 31. Then, he turned to Yunxiang and ordered. Chapter 995. In the auction. Nodding her head, Yunxiang got up and was about to leave the room when Yu Haoran suddenly called out to her. Yunxiang, if the Chamber of Commerce does not know the origins of the owner of room 31, then get the staff who received them to describe their appearance and characteristics. Master, I understand. Responding, Yunxiang opened the door and quickly left room 1. Yu Haoran, I think that young man is not arrogant and ignorant, but has the confidence to ignore the existence of Emperor Qin and the Great Elder. Just as Yunxiang left the room, Thowling carefully recalled the powerful force that blocked the divine will from entering the room, and said in a serious tone. Second-grade inherited family. Yu Haoran sneered as he curled his lips. That's right. Nodding his head in confirmation, Thowling reminded him with an even more serious expression. And it's an inherited family with a history of close to 10 million years. Thowling, don't worry, the other party did not offend me, and I will not take the initiative to provoke the other party, Yu Haoran promised, knowing that Thowling was reminding him with a serious tone. You are quite arrogant. Even the Qin Emperor of the Great Qin Empire, one of the 3 great empires of the profound sky continent, did not have the qualifications to know of the other party's background. The great elder, who was unable to restrain his anger, let out a strange cry. Just as he was about to continue questioning, Su Buguang hurriedly reached out to pull his arm and gently reminded him. Inherited family. Su Buguang's reminder made the great elder instantly recall the records of the inherited family in the Tianxian continent in the secret chamber of the valley, and a trace of fear appeared on his face. Old man, are you going to increase the price or not? As the great elder chose to remain silent due to fear, the impatient young man could not help but ask. I give up. The great elder replied dejectedly. Then, he ordered Su Buguang, return to the Valley of the Medicine Masters. The yin-yang life soul elixir and heavenly pure divine water had been suppressed by Yu Haoran, and the low-grade exalt realm sword had been suppressed by the disciples of the inherited family clans. The grand elder felt a deep sense of helplessness. At this moment, he only wanted to return to the Valley of the Medicine Masters as soon as possible, to return to a place he was familiar with, and then through the cultivation of his state of mind, he could readjust his emotions. Hey Bien, since the last competitor has already given up, why don't you hurry up and announce the owner of the 9-star soul-chasing sword? Seeing that the head elder of the Valley of the Medicine Masters had not only voluntarily given up on the bid, but had even left the auction house in a daze, the young man in private room 31 instructed Bien Xingrui even more arrogantly than before. Are there any friends who wish to continue bidding? Perhaps the young man in room 31 had a great background, but the auction house had its own rules that it adhered to. Therefore, Bien Xingrui didn't pay much attention to the other party's instructions. Instead, he waited for more than a minute before he opened his mouth and started the countdown. Master, room 31 was purchased by the other party at a high price, so we can't find out his background. In the minute that Bien Xingrui was waiting, Yun Xiang, who had gone to find out about the young man in private room 31, returned and handed him 2 sketches. However, Qiumei, who received them, is an expert at sketching. She drew out the characteristics of the other party's body based on her memory. Handsome. After seeing the young man in the first sketch, Yu Haoran instantly felt that the other party was very handsome. It was the kind of handsomeness that could mesmerize countless young girls. Otherwise, Yun Xiang, who was standing to the side, wouldn't have taken a peek from time to time. Besides his handsomeness, what really caught his attention was the tattoo of a snake on the young man's neck. It was a greenish-yellow, crimson, and black snake. Yu Haoran, I already know the other party's background. Thaling also noticed the tattoo on the young man's neck, and his tone was obviously more relaxed. Thaling, I already know the other party's background. The family that inherited the bloodline of the ancient divine beast, Ba Serpent. Yu Haoran also guessed the other party's background. After all, the snake species represented by the greenish-yellow, crimson, and black snake were too obvious. As long as one had a little understanding of the ancient divine beasts, they would know the other party's true background. That's right. Thaling explained further while nodding to confirm Yu Haoran's conjecture. Ba Serpent, among the ancient divine beasts, is barely close to the ranks of the top divine beasts. However, due to its overly greedy and vicious nature, and the fact that it needs to devour a large number of living creatures to evolve, it was ostracized by its own kind. Due to its weak strength, it almost lost the inheritance of its race. And the family that inherited the bloodline of Ba Serpent is surnamed Xiu. They also inherited the greedy and vicious nature of Ba Serpent. As a result, the Xiu family's population is very small, and they can only hide in the most remote forest of the southern border. After saying this, Thaling looked through the boundless sea of consciousness at room number 31, and said with a contemptuous tone, It seems that the Xiu family also wants to seize a part of the heaven and earth's fortune through the hidden dragon ranking competition, and help them to leave the dangerous forest of the southern border. Thaling, can you take the risk and test the strength of this old man? He took out the second portrait. It was an old man with an extremely ordinary appearance. He thought of the contemptuous tone in Thaling's voice when he introduced the Xiu family a moment ago, and the young man's arrogant and ignorant behavior towards Emperor Qin. Immediately, the idea of tricking people emerged in his mind. The third tribulation of the peak of the quasi-martial revered realm. In fact, when Thaling found out that the other party was from the Xiu family that inherited the bloodline of Ba Serpent, he didn't care about being discovered by the other party. He forcibly tore apart the concealment formations set up by the other party's divine sense and formation flags, and understood the other party's true strength. Yu Haoran, have you thought it through? After saying the other party's strength, Thaling immediately saw a cold light flash in Yu Haoran's eyes. He immediately knew what he wanted to do, and asked with a slightly dignified tone. I have thought it through. Yu Haoran nodded his head. He was afraid that Thaling would think too much, so he hurriedly explained. Thaling, if the other party really wanted to take revenge on me, you wouldn't need to use the secret technique of body possession to help me. Because in the inherited memories of the 12 ancestors, there is a technique that can overdraft a certain amount of the ancestors' blood to display a terrifying fist technique that is infinitely close to the level of a martial revered. All right, just act according to your own thoughts. Yu Haoran's consolation made Thaling feel very gratified. Moreover, Thaling knew even more clearly that Yu Haoran's cultivation and comprehension had already reached the point where he could break through to the level of a martial saint. He didn't want to let the other party's arrogance and ignorance cause him to be unable to clear his mind and affect his comprehension towards the fusion of the two laws. 8 billion, third. Just as Yu Haoran decided to trick the other party, Bian Xingrui's countdown had reached the last time. Chapter 996. In the auction. Silence. Incomparable silence. After Yu Haoran joined the bidding for the 9 stars soul-chasing sword, the low-grade sword of Venerable Realm, there wasn't any exclamation or discussion. Instead, there was a sudden silence. You, what do you want to do? Just as he was happily listening to Bian Xingrui's plan and imagining himself wielding the 9-star soul-chasing sword to slaughter his enemies and easily becoming the champion of the southern region's hidden dragon rankings, Yu Haoran's sudden bid was like a bucket of ice water being poured over his head. At the same time, endless flames of rage instantly gushed out from his heart, causing the young man surnamed Xiu to be unable to rebuke him hoarsely. Xiu, what do you want to do? Yu Haoran directly revealed the young man's surname, and rebuked him in a similarly stern voice. You! Yu Haoran's sudden shout of his surname made the young man panic. He didn't know what to say. Yu Haoran pointed out the young man's surname with a stern expression. The young man in room 31 had a guilty conscience and was speechless. Everyone at the scene immediately guessed the young man's origin. Unfortunately, there were very few people living in the inaccessible sea forest of the southern region. So, there were very few people who really knew about the Xiu clan. Xiu, with my status and vision, the 9 stars soul-chasing sword isn't good enough for me. Its grade is really too low. When Yu Haoran saw that the other party was flustered because he had exposed his background, Yu Haoran directly attacked the other party's heart. But you're too arrogant and ignorant. You're too condescending. My father-in-law, the dignified emperor of the great Qin Empire, doesn't even have the qualifications to know your background. Do you think you are some great figure? You who have inherited the vicious and greedy character of the ancient divine beast, Ba Serpent, can only hide in the remote sea forest of the southern region forever. What qualifications do you have to look down on the heroes of the world? I was wondering who it was. Bian Xingrui, who was originally somewhat afraid of the young man's origin, sneered when he heard Yu Haoran reveal the young man's background. So, it's the Xiu clan that almost lost its bloodline inheritance and barely managed to survive. Heavenly Earth's business covered the entire Tianxian continent. They had even reached the most remote southern border, Hailin. Regarding the Xiu family, who had inherited the bloodline of the ancient mythological beast god, they were far more knowledgeable than Howren and Thaling. His background was like his clothes being stripped off completely by Howren, and then Bien Xingrui dragging him out in public to be pointed at and gossiped about. Howren and Bien Xingrui's actions just now made the young man surnamed Xiu's face turn pale in an instant. His eyes revealed a trace of panic. Eighth young master, calm your mind. Sensing the change in the young man's mood and state of mind, the old man in black immediately used a special secret method to awaken the young man who had fallen into a panic. Then he looked gloomily at the number 1 private room and threatened in a gloomy tone. Young man, my Xiu clan has been passed down for thousands of years. Our clan's heritage is far from what you can imagine. So, you'd better accumulate some virtue with your word. Otherwise, there will be another young elite skeleton in Guangling City. Haha. Facing the threat of the old man in black, Howren suddenly looked up and laughed loudly. After laughing for nearly 30 seconds, he stopped laughing and said in a provocative tone full of disdain. Since this prince consort made his debut, more than 20 quasi-martial revered experts have died in my hands. You're only a third tribulation quasi-martial revered expert. What qualifications do you have to threaten this prince consort? Taking 3 steps back, he directly leaned against the wall of the private room. A trace of panic flashed across the old man's face. Because just now, someone had used a powerful divine sense to directly tear apart the divine sense shielding formation that he had set up with his divine sense and formation flags. The person who could do this was at least a third tribulation peak quasi-martial revered expert who was proficient in formations. Therefore, the old man in black suspected that the expert who had torn apart the formation was very likely the person who was secretly protecting Howren. Seeing that the young man surnamed Xiu and the old man in black were so frightened by him that they did not dare to speak, Howren knew that things were not good. The reason why he had taken the initiative to stand out, besides wanting to suppress the other party's arrogance, was mainly because he wanted to trick the other party. Now, the other party was obviously afraid and wanted to give up. Wouldn't that be putting him in a difficult situation? Not to mention that he could not take out the 9-star soul-chasing sword. He could not take out the huge sum of 90 billion spirit stones. However, this prince consort is a reasonable person. As long as everyone acts according to the rules, even if I lose in the end, this prince consort will not be dissatisfied and will not take revenge. He tried to keep his tone as gentle as possible and his words were not as fierce as before. Howren hoped that he could exchange for the other party's arrogance. Howren, are you sure? The young man surnamed Xiu was pleasantly surprised by Howren's sudden change in attitude. He hurriedly asked, "This prince consort has always been a person who pays attention to what I say. I have never cheated or cheated." Howren boasted without blushing or skipping a beat. Fortunately, there were no people from the Emperor Qin's kingdom present, so they did not know much about his true nature. Therefore, no one exposed him in front of him or talked about him behind his back. 100 billion. Just as Howren finished boasting, the young man surnamed Xiu immediately raised the price of the sword to 100 billion. Clenching his fists, Bien Xingrui's face began to turn red and his breathing gradually became heavier. 100 billion. The auction price of the 9-star soul-chasing sword, a sword of the venerable realm, was less than 10 billion away from the 10th highest price in the auction history of the Tianxian continent. As long as the two of them raised the price again, this auction would not only make the heavenly earth's reputation completely surpass the other 2 chambers of commerce, but also give him the title of the strongest auctioneer. Damn, you're so rich. There was a happy smile on his face, but his tone was somewhat lacking in confidence, and he did not lower his voice to complain. 110 billion. Pretending to be distressed, Howren continued to raise the price by 10 billion. 120 billion. Without the slightest pause, the young man surnamed Xiu also raised the price by 10 billion. The southern border's sea forest had a dangerous environment. This meant that the natural environment of the sea forest was quite harsh, and there were countless southern border desolate beasts living there. However, the sea forest did not lack rich heaven and earth spirit chi and inexhaustible spirit veins. Moreover, for the sake of obtaining a good ranking in the Southern Territory's hidden dragon rankings and utilizing the enormous karmic luck to turn the karmic luck of the clan around, he and the black-clothed old man had even brought along an entire 30-plus spirit veins of various grade. In terms of wealth, except for Victor and a few other secret treasures that could not be exposed for the time being, Yu Haoran was far from being a match for the young man surnamed Xiu. Chapter 997. In the auction. 125 billion. Of course, he wouldn't take the risk and put himself in danger. Therefore, he only raised the price by half for the third bid. 140 billion. The young man surnamed Xiu continued to raise the price by 10 billion without any hesitation. You win, Xiu brat. Feeling that the time was right, Yu Haoran gave up the bid reluctantly. Others thought that Yu Haoran gave up reluctantly because he didn't have enough financial resources to continue bidding. However, Bian Xingrui knew very well that he was helping himself as well as tricking the young man. This was because the 140 billion bid was already ranked 9th in the history of the auction. Not only would it be recorded in the annals of history, but it would also bring unimaginable benefits to the Chamber of Commerce and himself. Therefore, Lian Xingrui decided to give Yu Haoran half of the spirit stones he got from the auction as a token of appreciation for his help. 140 billion going once. The astronomical price of 140 billion was already enough. Bian Xingrui was afraid that any more accidents would occur. The moment Yu Haoran signaled for him to give up, he sped up the countdown. 140 billion going twice. 140 billion going thrice. Congratulations to the distinguished guest in Private Room 31 for successfully bidding for the 9-star soul-chasing sword, a lower venerable realm sword. Following Lian Xingrui's final announcement of the end of the auction that had lasted for almost a day had officially come to an end. However, the commotion and impact this auction had caused would bring unimaginable changes to the profound sky continent. Yunxiang, arrange a secluded courtyard for me. I need to cultivate in seclusion for 7 days. Yu Haoran instructed Yunxiang when Bian Xingrui personally went to trade the 9-star soul-chasing sword and the spiritual stones with the young man surnamed Xiu. Only 7 days? Yunxiang asked reluctantly. Maybe less than 7 days. Yu Haoran felt that the young man might not even need 7 days to recover completely when he thought of the top elixir he had given to Shin Hokong. Alright. Seeing Yu Haoran's unquestionable expression, Yunxiang nodded with some disappointment. Then she got up and went to arrange a suitable courtyard for him to cultivate in. Within the Yen clan. Looks like the turmoil in the profound sky continent is about to begin. The Yen family's ancestors stood up and walked to the window after hearing Yen Fenghua's detailed introduction of the auction, especially when he talked about the 9-star soul-chasing sword and the Xiu family that had inherited the bloodline of the ancient divine beast, Ba Serpent. Raising his head to look at the starry night sky, the ancestor of the Yen family couldn't help but sigh. Ancestor, there's something I don't know if I should say. Turning his head to look at Patriarch Yen Xuejuan, Yen Fenghua thought for a moment, and finally gritted his teeth and said, Fenghua, I have already discussed this with Jun. From today onwards, you will be the temporary spokesperson for the position of the head of the Yen family. You will learn from Jun and retire to the position of an elder. Turning around to look at Yen Fenghua, the Yen family ancestor spoke with a gentle expression. Hearing the ancestor's instructions, Yen Fenghua immediately turned his head to look at Yen Xuejuan. Patriarch, I am willing to step down from the position of the head of the Yin family. Forcing out a smile, Yen Shuejuan explained somewhat unwillingly. Ancestor, there's no hurry to be the temporary head of the Yin family. Whether it was the forced smile or the unwillingness in his tone, Yen Fenghua knew that now wasn't the best time to take over the position of the head of the Yin family. Therefore, after he took the initiative to express his opinion that he wasn't suitable to be the head of the Yin family for the time being, he hurriedly said what he wanted to say just now. Ancestor, according to your instructions, when I sent people to gather information about the prince consort, I discovered that not only is he knowledgeable and multi-talented, but he also seems to know everything and know everything. Speaking up to here, Yen Fenghua raised his head to look into the ancestor's eyes, his tone revealing a trace of pleading. Fenghua hopes to take the risk and invite the prince consort over. Firstly, I hope to let him see the Yin family's attitude towards the ownership of the Emperor Qin's kingdom. Secondly, I hope to let him see the ancestor's condition and see if there's a way to heal your injuries. Yen Fenghua, the secret of my father's heavy injuries is only known to us inner family elders. After hearing Yen Fenghua's suggestion, Yen Shuejuan immediately reprimanded him with a stern expression. If Yu Haoran leaks this out, aren't you afraid that the other three great families will take the opportunity to destroy our Yen family? But from this point, it could be seen how much Yen Shuejuan valued the position of the head of the Yen family. It could also be seen how much he hated Yen Fenghua. Yen Fenghua, who had already expected this, ignored Yen Shuejuan's reprimand and only looked at the ancestor with a complicated expression. Why? Looking at Yen Fenghua's sincere eyes, the ancestor of the Yen family asked with a complicated expression. In order to have the confidence to face the Emperor Qin's northern expedition in the future, and also for the Yen family to have a better inheritance. Yen Fenghua spoke truthfully. Fenghua, I was wrong. Looking at his son, whose eyes flashed with a cold light from time to time, and then looking at Yen Fenghua, the ancestor of the Yen family smiled bitterly as he apologized. While Yen Shuejuan was not paying attention, he used the law martial technique that he could barely use and directly knocked Yen Shuejuan unconscious. Fenghua, prepare a generous gift and invite the prince consort to visit our Yen family in 3 days. Walking slowly in front of Yen Shuejuan, the ancestor of the Yen family instructed with gratification. Fenghua obeys. Yen Fenghua cupped his fists and replied. Just as he was about to turn around and prepare the generous gift, he heard the ancestor of the Yen family's command. Fenghua, I have already used my divine sense to inform everyone in the family that you will temporarily take over the position of the head of the family. 1 month later, we will hold a grand ceremony for you to inherit the position of head of the family. Ancestor, Fenghua will definitely not disappoint your expectations. Without any heroic words or shedding tears of gratitude, Yen Fenghua simply expressed his determination and walked out of the room. If your cultivation can break through to the realm of martial honor, our Yen family will definitely be able to walk out of Guangling City. Looking at Yen Fenghua, who was quickly leaving, the ancestor of the Yen family was both gratified and somewhat expectant. Then, he lowered his head and looked at the unconscious Yen Shuejuan. The gentleness in his eyes was gradually replaced by coldness. He slowly extended his finger and pointed directly at Yen Shuejuan's abdomen. Jun when the nest is overturned, no egg will remain intact. For the sake of the Yen family's inheritance, don't blame your father for temporarily sealing your cultivation. Inside the victor's space, Yu Haoran, combining the characteristics of your previous cultivation and physical body when breaking through, I'm afraid that it will be difficult for you to break through to the 10th level of the complete realm just by relying on the spiritual qi in the spirit stone. The pagoda spirit suggested as it looked at Yu Haoran, whose cultivation and physical body were still at the peak of the 9th grade martial royal realm after consuming 10 4th grade 1st grade spiritual stones. Therefore, if you want to break through to the 10th level of the complete realm before breaking through to the martial saint realm, you will need to borrow a strong external force. Chapter 998. Within Victor's time-accelerated space. That's right. As he nodded to confirm, Thaling waved his hand outside Victor's time-accelerated space, and a red peach of immortality quickly appeared in his hand. Howren, since you used the law of life when the peach of immortality withered to comprehend the law of life, when you use the peach of immortality to break through your cultivation, it will also help you continue to improve your comprehension of the law of life. He took the peach of immortality from Thaling's hand, put it under his nose, and took a deep breath. A heart-stirring fragrance caused his essence, energy, and spirit to reach their peak in an instant. He took a deep breath, opened his mouth, and swallowed the peach of immortality in a few bites. Then, he used the Great Mystery Heart Sutra and the Astral Do Mantra cultivation method, and began to use the pure energy that erupted from the peach of immortality to break through to the complete 10th grade martial emperor realm. If one were to compare the energy, the pure spiritual chi contained in a 1st grade 4th grade spirit stone was equivalent to a lake, then the pure energy contained in the peach of immortality was equivalent to a vast ocean. Moreover, the pure energy contained in the peach of immortality was far more effective in improving one's physical body and soul than a 4th grade spirit stone. Under the impact of the enormous pure energy that erupted from the peach of immortality, his physical body, which had long reached the peak of the 9th grade martial emperor realm, was the first to break through to the complete 10th grade in a mere 5 minutes. At the same time, the breakthrough of his physical body, coupled with the pure energy of the peach of immortality, only lasted for 3 minutes before the bottleneck of the complete 10th grade martial emperor realm was easily broken through. This allowed his cultivation and physical body to reach the peak of the martial emperor realm. As he used the energy that had not been completely consumed by the peach of immortality to consolidate his cultivation and realm, he carefully listened to Thaling's explanation of what he needed to pay attention to when breaking through to the martial saint realm, and how to use the law of life and death to successfully comprehend the law of martial techniques at the moment of breakthrough. Just as Howren was using Victor's time-accelerated ability to raise his cultivation and strength with all his might, an extremely shocking event occurred in Guangling City. The young man with the surname Xiao, who had successfully obtained the 9-star soul-chasing sword, had issued a challenge to all the young men from the 4 big clans of Guangling City who had the qualifications to participate in the Hidden Dragon rankings. During the auction for the 9-star soul-chasing sword, the reason why the young man surnamed Xiao was suppressed by Howren was because Howren had revealed his origin, causing him to be in a daze for a moment. However, this did not represent the true strength of the family that had inherited the bloodline of the ancient divine beast. With the cultivation of an early 2nd grade martial saint, the young man surnamed Xiao was completely capable of defeating ordinary peak 7th grade martial saints. As the young man surnamed Xiao's opponents, the young geniuses from the 4 great clans were not only martial emperors, but they also only had the strength to challenge people who were 1 or 2 small realms above them. The result of the fight between the two could be imagined. 7 young people who were qualified to participate in the Hidden Dragon ranking contest could not even withstand a single blow from the young man surnamed Xiao's fist technique and were defeated one after another. Originally, victory and defeat were commonplace in a military battle. What's more, it was a spar between youngsters, so it shouldn't have caused too much of a stir. However, no one would have thought that the young man surnamed Xiao would be so vicious. Of the 7 people, 3 were directly killed on the spot, 2 suffered heavy injuries that were difficult to recover from, and the other 3 suffered different degrees of light injuries. Faced with such a tragic loss, the Feng family's ancestor, who was ranked 2nd among the 4 great clans, was furious and wanted to avenge his 2 family members who had died tragically. However, He was directly killed by the black-clothed old man behind the young man surnamed Xiao using the 9-star soul-chasing sword. If the matter had ended like this, it would have been fine. Who told them to be inferior? However, not only did the young man surnamed Xiao not leave Guangling City, he even challenged Yu Haoran by name and said many humiliating words. The Quiet Fragrance Pavilion was the courtyard where Yunxiang was temporarily staying in Guangling City. However, it was now temporarily occupied by Yu Haoran as his place of cultivation. Standing in front of the courtyard of the Quiet Fragrance Pavilion, Bian Xingrui asked Yunxiang in a fawning manner, "Yunxiang, why don't you go in and report?" Originally, Yu Haoran temporarily staying in the Heavenly Earth Chamber of Commerce was a secret that only he and Yunxiang knew. However, thinking that the most highly regarded son-in-law of the Emperor Qin, who was at the pinnacle of alchemy and formation, was staying in the Heavenly Earth Chamber of Commerce could greatly increase the reputation of the Chamber of Commerce, Bian Xingrui secretly leaked the news. Now, facing the provocation of the young man surnamed Xiao, as well as the expectations of countless people in Guangling City and the 4 great clans, Bian Xingrui was under a lot of pressure. If everyone didn't know that Yu Haoran was still staying in Guangling City, then the young man surnamed Xiao wouldn't have challenged Yu Haoran. If the young man surnamed Xiao didn't challenge Yu Haoran, then the patriarchs of the 4 great clans wouldn't have paid him a visit at the same time. If it wasn't because he didn't understand Yu Haoran's character, he didn't know whether Yu Haoran would choose to accept the challenge or be impolite in the face of the young man surnamed Xiao's challenge. Because he was worried that if Yu Haoran wasn't interested in the young man surnamed Xiao's challenge and didn't plan to show up, then it would certainly damage the reputation that Yu Haoran had accumulated with great difficulty. If Yu Haoran knew that the main culprit that caused his reputation to fall was him, then it would greatly affect the Chamber of Commerce's business in the southern mountain range. Uncle Bian, when Master was in seclusion, he specifically told me that without his order, I am not allowed to enter the courtyard, let alone disturb his cultivation. Facing Bian Xingrui's request, Yunxiang indicated with a wry smile. AI. Seeing that Yunxiang didn't dare to disobey Yu Haoran's order, Bian Xingrui couldn't help but sigh. Afterwards, he planned to turn around and leave, and then tell the patriarchs of the 4 great clans who had paid a visit to Yu Haoran to ask them to wait for a while. Yunxiang, Elder Bian, what happened? Just as he left Victor's time-accelerated space, and was preparing to go out to look for 4th Order Saint Realm exotic beasts to test his strength after the breakthrough, Yu Haoran unexpectedly sensed the aura of Yunxiang and Bian Xingrui. While opening the door of the cultivation room, he greeted them with a smile. "Master, you came out!" Yunxiang shouted in surprise. "Master, you finally came out!" Bian Xingrui also felt happy, but at the same time, there was a trace of nervousness in his heart. "Come in." Using a strong wind to open the courtyard door, Yu Haoran stepped into the courtyard's pavilion while greeting Yunxiang and Bian Xingrui. "Master Yu, this Bian apologizes to you." After stepping into the Yuxiang pavilion, Bian Xingrui asked for forgiveness with an apologetic face. "What's the matter?" Yu Haoran asked with a slight frown. Then, Bian Xingrui told Yu Haoran everything that had happened in the past 5 days. Yu Haoran didn't care much about Bian Xingrui leaking the news that he was staying at the Chamber of Commerce, because he didn't want to hide his whereabouts. He was even more happy about the challenge from the young man surnamed Xiao. Chapter 999. In the Yuxiang Pavilion. When and where? Yu Haoran immediately asked excitedly as he stopped walking towards the pavilion. In the central square of Guangling City. The young man surnamed Xiao has been waiting there, Bian Xingrui immediately replied, as he could sense Yu Haoran's excitement. "Yunxiang, wait until Master defeats that guy surnamed Xiao, then I will guide your cultivation." After getting the specific time and location of the challenge, Yu Haoran directly soared into the sky and quickly rushed to the central square of Guangling while leaving instructions for Yunxiang. This is bad. Seeing that Yu Haoran not only accepted the challenge of the young man surnamed Xiu, but also directly went to meet him without any preparation, Lian Xingrui had a bad feeling. Because he suddenly thought of the black-clothed old man who easily killed the Feng family's ancestor with the 9-star soul-chasing sword. Without the slightest hesitation, Bian Xingrui immediately arranged for the Chamber of Commerce's experts to protect Yunxiang. After arriving at the central square, he immediately went to another courtyard and invited the Chamber of Commerce to arrange a second-stage martial venerable expert to protect his safety. As his cultivation and physical grade reached the peak of the 10th stage martial emperor, not only was his realm and strength far superior to his previous life's peak, but his speed was also astonishingly fast. In just over 20 seconds, he had already arrived at the central square of Guangling City. Seeing the arrogant young man surnamed Xiu standing in the center of the square with his hands behind his back, Yu Haoran quickly took out his purple staff and shouted, "Brat, eat this prince consort's stick." The purple staff that instantly lengthened and thickened like a mountain heavily smashed towards the young man surnamed Xiu. The sudden roar in his ears startled the young man surnamed Xiu. After seeing the purple staff quickly smashing towards him, he quickly calmed down and a look of disdain appeared on his face. Then, he suddenly kicked his legs and soared into the sky while his clenched left fist heavily smashed onto the purple staff. Boom! Accompanied by a deafening roar, the purple staff was blown away while the young man surnamed Xiu was also directly smashed down by the strong rebound force. However, his powerful physical strength allowed him to quickly remove the rebound force and steadily land on the ground, showing his extraordinary strength. Not bad, you are qualified to challenge this prince consort. Yu Haoran, who quickly landed on the central square, took the purple staff and nodded in praise. Since I, Xiu Ruojia, stepped into the southern mountain range, I have heard all about how outstanding your talent is, Yu Haoran, how many tricks you have, how powerful you are. Facing Yu Haoran's praise, the young man surnamed Xiu was deeply disappointed. But after the test just now, you're only Yu Haoran. Now, it seems that the southern mountain range has really declined. Xiu Ruojia, is it? After hearing Xiu Ruojia's disappointed evaluation, or more accurately, arrogant evaluation, Yu Haoran retorted with a sneer. Your performance just now really proved the proverb, give you some sunlight and you'll shine. Give you some seawater and you'll flood. Just now, this prince consort only used 30% of my physical strength, and I also used the basic staff technique. You are so confident before we really fight. I don't know how you grew up in the sea forest where wild beasts dominate. Is that so? Facing Yu Haoran's counterattack, the contemptuous smile on Xiu Ruojia's face disappeared in an instant, and then he completely disappeared. You want to use the void law to sneak attack me? Xiu, you are still too inexperienced. Yu Haoran sneered in the face of Xiu Ruojia's sudden disappearance. He clenched his left fist and used the ancestral wizard fist technique, and then heavily blasted the void on his right. Boom! Accompanied by a roar, a green figure flashed in the void that was blasted by the ancestral wizard fist technique. You want to leave? Seeing Xiu Ruojia, who flashed and merged into the void, Yu Haoran shouted softly and rushed forward by more than 10 meters. His left fist, which had been accumulating power for a long time, heavily blasted the void. The green figure flashed and continued to merge into the void, still trying to use the void law to sneak attack him. In this regard, Yu Haoran suddenly felt a little impatient. He directly took out the purple cudgel and used the tracking secret method taught by Thaling to attack the corner where Xiu Ruojia used the void law to hide himself every time. Boom! Boom! Accompanied by the continuous roars around the central square, Countless powerhouses and masters who rushed over were stunned as they watched Yu Haoran use the purple cudgel to easily suppress Xiao Ruojie, who was using the Void Law. If the first two attacks were because Yu Haoran's own sensitive senses accurately found the position where he was hiding, then it was because of Yu Haoran's own sensitive senses. After that, the purple cudgel could accurately find the corner where he used the Void Law every time. This meant that the opponent either had a secret treasure that could see through the Void Law, or he had cultivated a secret method to track the fluctuations of the power of the law. But whether it was a secret treasure or a secret method, if he wanted to get out of the predicament in front of him, he had to stop using the Void Law and then rely on his own strength to defeat and kill the opponent. When the purple cudgel once again accurately hit the corner of the void, Xiao Ruojie did not continue to use the Void Law to dodge. Instead, he directly took out a life sword that was emitting a green light and had reached the lower grade of the Saint Realm. Then, he directly integrated the power of the second law that he had comprehended and quickly blocked the purple cudgel. Although Yu Haoran had been guarding against Xiao Ruojie's counterattack, he had used the Void Law to dodge more than 10 times in a row, so it was inevitable that he could not maintain the peak power of the cudgel attack. In the end, the purple cudgel was hit back by the swordsmanship that Xiao Ruojie had carefully prepared. The strong vibration made his left hand, which was holding the purple cudgel, feel slightly numb. Then, he had to constantly retreat to get rid of the vibration on the purple cudgel. Yu Haoran, it seems that I have underestimated you. Xiao Ruojie, who emerged from the void, said solemnly. Unfortunately, Xiao Ruojie, I overestimated you just now. Yu Haoran commented in disappointment as he put away the purple cudgel and took out his life sword that had just advanced to the lower grade of the Emperor realm. How arrogant! In Xiao Ruojie's opinion, it should be an honor for someone of the same generation to be praised by him. It was one thing for Xiao Ruojie not to shed tears of gratitude, but to use this opportunity to humiliate him made him burn with rage. With a roar, Xiao Ruojie's body suddenly exploded. Then, countless green swords rushed over like a storm. Sword pursuit. In the face of the torrential rain of green swords, Yu Haoran raised his life sword and directly used the first move of his self-created sword technique, sword pursuit. Chapter 1000. Guangling City, Central Plaza. Following a crisp collision sound, the natal sword that had transformed into lightning was instantly bounced back by a strong force. The azure sword that had been hit by the natal sword was directly shattered, and countless azure fragments reformed into Xiao Ruojie's figure. However, Xiao Ruojie was currently in a very sorry state. Not only were his azure robes tattered, but there was also a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. This meant that he had received a slight injury in the collision just now. Good, very good, very good. Wiping off the trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, Xiao Ruojie's face revealed a sinister expression as he said good 3 times. Soon after, he put away the azure sword and said with a sinister smile, Yu Haoran, you have completely infuriated me. Next, I will let you see what kind of capital I, Xiao Ruojie, have to be able to look down on the heroes of the world that you spoke of. Following the arrogant sinister laughter, Xiao Ruojie's body quickly elongated, causing the tattered azure robes on his body to burst apart. Following the elongation of his body, Xiao Ruojie's head gradually started to twist, and finally became a fierce snake head. 5 seconds later, the originally handsome and elegant Xiao Ruojie had become an enormous python that was close to 1,000 meters long. This is the legendary ancient divine beast, the boss serpent. Outside the plaza, the ancestor from the Gu family involuntarily yelled out with a frightened expression. I understand now. The ancestor from the Gu family couldn't help but softly mutter to himself as his expression became serious. So the true method of the family that inherited the bloodline of the ancient divine beasts to dominate the profound sky continent is that they can rely on their own bloodline to transform into the inherited divine beasts. Uncle Bien, my master will be fine, right? Seeing Xiao Ruojia transform into the Ba Serpent, Yun Xiang, who had been admiring his handsome appearance from time to time, immediately had a trace of disgust flash through her eyes. However, when the Ba Serpent's body was close to 1,000 meters long and emitted a dense evil aura, she couldn't help but worriedly grab Bian Xingrue's arm and ask with a worried expression. Patting Yunxiang's arm, Bian Xingrue squeezed out a smile and comforted her. Xiang, don't worry, I believe master you must have a way to deal with it. Transform into ancestral Ba Serpent. Yu Haoran muttered to himself calmly as he looked at Xiao Ruojia, who had transformed into 1,000 meters tall. Then, he put away his natal sword and pounded his chest with his fists as he roared at the sky. Yu Haoran's body began to grow rapidly as he bellowed furiously. Very soon, he became a 1,000-meter-tall giant that was like a mountain peak. Originally, according to the classification of the ancestral wizard's height and realm, the ancestral wizard should only be 999 meters tall after transforming before his physical body broke through the martial sage realm. He did not know if it was because the grade of his physical body had advanced to level 10 perfection, but the height of the ancestral wizard after his transformation had reached 1,000 meters. This also allowed him to exert the strength of a peak 7th-level martial sage without using the secret method of the ancestral wizard's bloodline inheritance. Compared to the shock brought by Xiao Ruojia's transformation into a 1,000-meter-tall Ba Serpent, everyone's reaction to Yu Haoran's transformation into a 1,000-meter-tall giant was relatively calm. After all, many experts present had witnessed Yu Haoran's transformation into a 1,000-meter-tall giant when he was fighting with the quasi-venerable realm beast in the Hengduan mountain range. This is the ancestral wizard that could kill the divine beast king in ancient times. Looking at the 1,000-meter-tall giant that was emitting a baleful aura that far surpassed the Ba Serpent's, the black-clothed old ancestor standing at the edge of the square had a frightened expression as he muttered to himself absent-mindedly. Then, he remembered that the reason why the ancient Ba Serpent almost lost its inheritance was because the ancestral wizard naturally liked to eat the flesh and blood of the Ba Serpent, causing the Ba Serpent's inheritance to have a natural fear of the ancestral wizard. The black-clothed old man immediately used his divine sense to remind Xiao Ruojia to be more vigilant. Originally, Xiao Ruojia was still feeling puzzled because of the fear that suddenly appeared in his heart. However, after hearing the black-clothed old man's reminder, he understood and a strong sense of unwillingness surged in his heart. Why? Why could the ancestral wizard feed on his ancestors? Why couldn't it be the other way around and he feed on the ancestral wizard? Roar! Unlike the roars of ordinary snakes, the Ba Serpent's roar was very similar to the roar of a dragon. After letting out an angry roar, Xiao Ruojia, who had transformed into the Ba Serpent, raised his snake head high and opened his huge snake mouth. Then, an unimaginably huge suction force began to crazily devour everything in front of him. Leave here quickly. When he felt that Xiao Ruojia was using the Ba Serpent's bloodline inheritance's sky-devouring mystic technique, Yu Haoran immediately turned his head and reminded the people watching the battle behind him. Then, he pushed with his feet and leaned his upper body forward by 45 degrees to resist the suction force that was getting stronger and stronger. However, in the face of the suction force that was getting stronger and stronger, it was difficult to support it with just the strength of his feet. Leaning forward, Yu Haoran suddenly sucked hard, and then used the ancestral wizard's roar to temporarily offset a part of the suction force. Using this, Yu Haoran directly soared into the sky. The Ba Serpent's head, which had opened its mouth, followed Yu Haoran into the sky and aimed directly at the endless void. Wizard destroys the earth. Ignoring the strong suction force that was rapidly approaching him from behind, Yu Haoran directly used the fist technique that was created by the most powerful ancestral wizard among the 12 ancestral wizards. It was also with this fist technique that the most powerful ancestral wizard had forcefully injured one of the 9 great mythical beast kings, the 9-clawed purple-gold divine dragon. Accompanied by Yu Haoran's roar, the fist technique that was quickly released gradually condensed into a person. Although the person's appearance could not be seen clearly, one could tell at a glance that he was an extraordinary master. The figure condensed from the fist technique expanded in the wind and quickly became a towering giant that was more than 10 times larger than Yu Haoran. Facing the strong suction force from the Ba Serpent's mouth, the giant directly stretched out its hands and tore apart the invisible suction force as if it was tearing apart a piece of cloth. Then, it raised its large and thick left foot and viciously stomped on the Ba Serpent's head. Boom! Unable to withstand the stomping force from the giant foot, the Ba Serpent's huge head was viciously stomped into the ground by the giant foot. The powerful stomping force not only smashed a huge hole that was dozens of meters deep into the hard ground, it also completely interrupted the Ba Serpent's sky-devouring mystic technique. Boom! Just as the giant condensed from the fist technique viciously stomped the Ba Serpent's head into the ground, the rapidly descending Yu Haoran landed steadily in front of the Ba Serpent's body. Then, he directly dug his 10 fingers into the snake's body and began to forcefully spin and whip the Ba Serpent. Brat, let go of young Master Ruajia. The towering giant condensed from Yu Haoran's fist technique was so shocking that the black-robed elder momentarily fell into a daze. Chapter 1001. In the central square of Guangling City. Old man, what if I don't let go? Yu Haoran asked coldly. He had knocked Xiao Ruajia unconscious with a heavy punch and then used the secret technique of overdrawing his witch ancestor bloodline. If you don't let go, you can go to hell. The old man in black took out the 9-star soul-chasing sword and was ready to attack. You can give it a try. Just as Yu Haoran was about to kill Xiao Ruajia and use the secret technique of overdrawing his witch ancestor bloodline to heavily injure the old man in black, he heard a familiar voice. Then, a thin old man in blue appeared in front of him. Who are you? The old man in black asked solemnly as he subconsciously took a step back and held the lower honorable realm's sword tightly in his hand. Although the thin old man in blue who had suddenly appeared in front of him was only a second tribulation quasi-martial honorable, he gave him a very dangerous feeling. Even with the lower honorable realm sword, the 9-star soul-chasing sword, the dangerous feeling did not weaken at all. My surname is Shin and my name is Hao Kong. I'm just a nobody. The old man in blue introduced himself indifferently. After hearing the old man in blue's introduction, the 2 ancestors from the Gui clan and the Gu clan looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. This was because they remembered the powerful man who had followed the Huang clan's ancestor 50 years ago. In addition to the shock in the Gu clan's ancestors' eyes, there was a trace of sadness. After all, the old man in blue had once been madly infatuated with his sister. If he had been able to persuade his father to change his mind, he would have let his sister choose the old man in blue even if he had to completely fall out with the Huang clan. Then, the Gu clan would not only become the #1 clan in Guangling City, but they would also be able to walk out of Guangling City and occupy more territory and obtain more cultivation resources. My surname is Xiao and my name is Qi Hao. I'm from the Highland Xiao clan. The old man in black did not dare to be arrogant in the face of Shin Hokong's self-introduction. Then, he cupped his fist and asked Shin Hokong, Brother Shin, what is your relationship with Yu Haoran? I'm a servant. Shin Haokong replied emotionlessly. Yu Haoran couldn't help but slap his forehead. However, at this moment, he still maintained the body of the ancestral wizard that was 1,000 meters tall. His action of raising his hand to slap his forehead immediately attracted the attention of everyone present. When Yu Haoran detected the crowd's gaze and saw that the unconscious Xiao Ruojie had already returned to his original body, he also dispersed the ancestral wizard's body. Then, he smiled bitterly and complained to Shin Hokong. "Elder Shin, didn't we agree that you are my senior? I will always treat you as my senior." In the face of Yu Haoran's grievance, Shin Hokong maintained a calm expression and replied, "Etiquette cannot be abandoned, and rules cannot be disobeyed." In response, Yu Haoran could only shrug his shoulders helplessly and stand to the side to watch how he dealt with the old man in black. "Brother Shin, for the sake of the Xiao clan, can you let my young master go for the time being?" Xiao Qiheo asked respectfully, not believing that Shin Hokong was Yu Haoran's servant at all. Shin Hokong shook his head in response to Xiao Qiheo's request, then pointed at Yu Haoran and said, "Brother Xiao, I can't make the decision on this matter. I still need to see what my young master thinks. Elder Shin, in your current state, can you deal with Xiao Qiheo?" Seeing that Shin Hokong had given the final decision to him, Yu Haoran quickly thought about it and asked through divine telekinesis. "If he doesn't have a lower venerable realm sword, I have a 90% chance of defeating him, and a 70% chance of killing him." Shin Hokong answered honestly in response to Yu Haoran's divine telekinesis. "But now, if I overdraw a part of my potential or life force, the result will be 50-50. Whether it was the secret method of overdrawing nearly half of the ancestral shaman's blood or Shin Hokong's method of overdrawing his potential and life force, he didn't want to see it happen. Therefore, seeing Xiao Qiheo's gaze, Yu Haoran finally took a deep breath and kicked Xiao Ruojie to Xiao Qiheo. However, when he kicked Xiao Ruojie, Yu Haoran took away the storage ring on his finger without leaving a trace, which could be considered Xiao Ruojie's punishment. "Get out of Guangling City immediately." Yu Haoran reprimanded Xiao Qiheo with a cold expression as he looked at Xiao Qiheo, who had reached out to grab Xiao Ruojie. "Kid, the Green Mountains will not change and the clear waters will flow forever. We'll meet again in the future," Xiao Qiheo threatened as he helped Xiao Ruojie consume the healing pills. "Old man, the Green Mountains and clear waters are suitable for eternal rest. When we meet again in the future, this young master will make you sleep forever." Yu Haoran, who had never lost in a verbal battle, immediately retorted. "Humph." In the face of Yu Haoran's counterattack, Xiao Qiheo snorted disdainfully and then nodded to Shin Hokong. "Brother Shin, farewell. I won't see you out." After nodding in response to Xiao Qiheo's farewell, Shin Hokong turned to look at Yu Haoran and asked, "Now, my injuries have recovered to 80%. The rest will require time to slowly recuperate. Where do you want to go next?" "Let's go to the Heavenly Earth Chamber of Commerce to rest for a day. After we leave Guangling City tomorrow, I'll bring you to a good place where you can break through to the third tribulation quasi-revered level." If not for the fact that he had to wait for Shin Hokong to recover from his injuries, he would have left Guangling City long ago after the auction ended. Since he had recovered from his injuries, Yu Haoran decided to continue with the plan that he had made in advance and head to the next heavenly abode that was concealed by the formation. "You're the young master, you make the decision." After Shin Hokong nodded in agreement, he took the initiative to stand beside him, with a posture of being willing to be a slave. In response, Yu Haoran rolled his eyes at him and nodded to Bian Xingrui and Yunxiang at the edge of the square. Then, he soared into the sky and returned to the Yuxiang pavilion. Stepping into the pavilion, before Yunxiang returned, Yu Haoran hurriedly checked the storage ring that he had secretly taken from Xiao Ruojie. F***CK. After his mind entered the storage ring, Yu Haoran could not help but swear due to his uncontrollable excitement. Although the space in Xiao Ruojie's storage ring was not very big, there were 10 spiritual veins sealed by talismans in the ring. A mere disciple of the martial sage realm actually carried 10 spiritual veins with him when he went out to train. How could he not feel envious and jealous? The spirit stones that the Law Enforcement Peak, 100 Feet Peak, Xiangshan Bandit Group, Giant Sword Sect, Four Symbols Sect and Huang Clan had painstakingly obtained from the treasuries of these 6 forces were not even 1/10 of the spiritual veins that Xiao Ruojie carried with him. How could he not sigh at the unfairness of the world? Chapter 1002. In the Yu Xiang Pavilion. Elder Shin, I have a small gift for you. Feeling Shin Hokong's gaze, Yu Haoran took a deep breath. After dispelling the depression in his heart, he took out an upper-level 7 spiritual vein and threw it to Shin Hokong. This is an upper-level 7 spiritual vein. After taking the spiritual vein from Yu Haoran, a look of shock appeared on Shin Hokong's face. Elder Shin, use it as you wish. If it's not enough, ask me for more. Even a second tribulation quasi-martial venerable expert was so shocked by an upper-level 7 spiritual vein. Yu Haoran's depression in his heart suddenly eased a lot, and then he pretended to be forthright. This old servant thanks young master for the reward. After putting away the upper-level 7 spiritual vein, Shin Hokong quickly got up and thanked him. In this regard, other than continuing to roll his eyes, he was too lazy to continue to argue with him. While waving his hand to indicate that Shin Hokong did not need to be polite, his consciousness began to discuss with Thaling in the Sea of Consciousness. Thaling, when you wake up, let's go to the sea forest of southern border. Yu Haoran, even if there is not a large number of spiritual veins, after your cultivation breaks through to the martial venerable realm, we still have to go to the sea forest of southern border. In the face of Yu Haoran's proposal, Thaling smiled and replied, because there is a heaven-defying opportunity in the sea forest of southern border that will allow your physical body to reach the Emperor realm. Thaling, what kind of heaven-defying opportunity is it? Yu Haoran immediately asked excitedly. It's a secret for now. Shaking his head, Thaling smiled and refused to disclose in advance. In this regard, Yu Haoran could only helplessly give up the idea of continuing to ask. Master, just as Yu Haoran sent the 9 spiritual veins, as well as some elixirs and refining materials from Xiao Ruojie's storage ring to Victor, Yunxiang also returned to the Yuxiang Pavilion. Yunxiang, come here. Yu Haoran beckoned Yunxiang to come over. How has your cultivation been in the past few days? Did you encounter anything that you don't understand? Motioning Yunxiang to sit down, Yu Haoran asked. In the face of Yu Haoran's questioning, Yunxiang frowned slightly and looked at Shin, with a hint of warning in her eyes. Elder Shin is not only your master's elder, but also your martial arts senior. It just so happens that he can give you pointers on your cultivation. Seeing that Shin Hokong was about to get up and leave, Yu Haoran hurriedly reminded him. Slightly getting up and sitting down again, Shin Hokong just wanted to listen to Yunxiang's cultivation experience. He wanted to see if Yu Haoran, who was not even as old as his disciple, had the qualifications to be her master and the ability to give her pointers on her cultivation. Master, disciple's cultivation process has been very smooth these past few days, but the speed of cultivation has made me very puzzled. At this point, Yunxiang directly stimulated the Yuan Qi in her body, revealing the cultivation of a peak 6th grade martial disciple. Yunxiang, transfer a trace of Yuan Qi to your master. Excluding the time spent at the auction, Yunxiang had officially started cultivating the Tao of Poison for only 6 days. In 6 days, her cultivation had reached the peak of the 6th grade martial disciple, which was equivalent to 1 small realm per day. With such a shocking speed of cultivation breakthrough, even the reincarnation of a demon god would not be able to achieve such a crazy speed of improvement. Therefore, Yu Haoran wanted to use the Yuan Qi that she cultivated to see if there was any problem with her. This is the yuan qi that contains the spirit soul-devouring poison. Seeing that the yuan qi that Yunxiang transferred out was black, Shin Hokong felt a trace of doubt at the same time, and at the same time, he could not help but want to use his spiritual will to check the yuan qi's attribute. But just as his spiritual will approached the black yuan qi, an extremely dangerous threat of death caused him to quickly withdraw his spiritual will, and at the same time, he shouted with a frightened expression, "Elder Shun, be quiet." Slightly frowning, Yu Haoran reminded him with some displeasure. Then, he continued to carefully observe the yuan qi that contained the spirit soul-devouring poison. Seeing that Yu Haoran, who was constantly examining the black yuan qi with his spiritual will, did not suffer any harm from the spirit soul-devouring poison, the shock in Shin Hokong's heart was like a river overturning the sea. Yunxiang, in the past few years, have you consumed a lot of precious medicinal herbs and elixirs? After careful observation, Yu Haoran found that the black yuan qi was very condensed, which meant that Yunxiang was strictly following his instructions to cultivate. But the speed of improvement of the realm could be said to be against the heavens, which meant that there was enough energy to support her rapid cultivation breakthrough. Thinking of Yunxiang's background and Bian Xingrue's doting on her, a thought quickly came to his mind. Yes. Nodding, Yunxiang explained. Ever since they found out that I could not cultivate because of the spirit soul-devouring poison, the president and a few elders wanted me to walk the path of a physical sage, so when I was very young, they had been feeding me a lot of top-notch medicinal herbs and elixirs. That's right. After getting Yunxiang's confirmation, Yu Haoran nodded and explained after sending the black yuan qi back to Yunxiang's dantian. Yunxiang, the reason why your cultivation can improve so quickly is not only because you are suitable for poison cultivation, but also because you have accumulated too much medicinal power in your previous life. According to my inspection just now, the medicinal power accumulated in your body can support your cultivation until you break through to the peak of the 9th grade martial master, so you don't need to worry about your rapid cultivation breakthrough. Thank you, master. Yu Haoran's detailed explanation solved the doubts in Yunxiang's heart, and she could finally continue to cultivate the poison Dao Cannon with peace of mind. But her relaxed mood was suddenly tensed up again because of Yu Haoran's next words. However, the breakthrough of cultivation is just an increase in strength, and it is only the first stage of cultivation. If you want to transform strength into strength, you need to go through the tempering of blood and fire. At this point, Yu Haoran couldn't help but frown. This was because Yunxiang's situation was different from ordinary people. Ordinary martial artists could quickly familiarize themselves with and master the strength of their cultivation breakthrough by comparing notes with their peers. But Yunxiang, who contained the spirit devourer poison, only had one result if she made a move, and that was death. But if she only went through the tempering by killing strange beasts, it would definitely affect the improvement of her combat experience and mental state cultivation. After thinking about it, Yu Haoran finally decided to reveal some of Yunxiang's secrets to Bian Xingrue, and then let him arrange a suitable tempering target for her through the power of the Chamber of Commerce. Yunxiang, go and ask your uncle Bian to come over. Yes, master. Yunxiang nodded, got up, and quickly left the pavilion. After Yunxiang left the Yuxiang pavilion, Shin Hokong immediately asked nervously, Haoran, why are you not afraid of the spirit devourer poison? Because I have been poisoned by the spirit devourer poison before, and I know how to remove the poison's damage to the soul. Yu Haoran replied with a little concealment. You can refine the spirit devourer antidote pill. Chapter 1003. In the Yu Xiang Pavilion. Elder Shun, the process of the spirit devourer poison eroding the divine soul is unpredictable. It is impossible to refine a detoxification pill that specifically targets the poison. Although he didn't want to disappoint Shin Hokong, it was the truth, and Yu Haoran couldn't lie to him. Then how did you get rid of the spirit devourer poison? The expectation on his face was instantly replaced by disappointment, but Shin Hokong still didn't give up and asked. According to my own research on poison, and then combined with the different degrees of erosion of the spirit devourer poison on the divine soul, I have a certain degree of confidence that I can remove and transfer the poison. Shin Hokong was so entangled on how to get rid of the spirit devourer poison, which made Yu Haoran realize that he, who was born as a rogue cultivator, probably still had relatives or close friends who were still alive. Moreover, that person was very likely to be injured by the spirit devourer poison. Young master, how confident are you that you can remove and transfer the spirit devourer poison? Shin Hokong quickly asked. The disappointment on his face was instantly replaced by expectation. It's hard to say, it depends on the situation. As the spirit devourer poison ranks 17th on the Tianxian continent's 100 poison list, no alchemist or poison master in the entire Tianxian continent dared to pat their chest and say that they could get rid of it 100%. Therefore, while Yu Haoran answered cautiously, he also asked directly. Elder Shin, what's the matter with you? After hearing Yu Haoran's interrogation, Shin Hokong suddenly fell silent. He was silent until Yunxiang brought Bian Xingrui into the Yuxiang pavilion, and he didn't explain why he kept asking about the spirit devourer antidote. In this regard, Yu Haoran didn't continue to press him, but planned to wait for him to figure it out and then tell him. After motioning Bian Xingrui to sit down, Yu Haoran explained Yunxiang's special situation and the difficulties she encountered in detail. However, she did not reveal the poison Dao cannon that she cultivated. Although he was somewhat dissatisfied with Yunxiang cultivating the Dao of poison, Bian Xingrui quickly accepted this reality when he thought about how it was the only way for her to set foot on the Dao of martial cultivation. As for Yunxiang's predicament, he did not feel that it was troublesome at all. Master Yu, do you know what kind of forces are the most common in the Tianxian continent? Lian Xingrui asked. Shaking his head, Yu Haoran indicated that he did not know. If it was in the past, he would have answered the question directly. It was because most likely the number of sects in the entire Tianxian land would exceed 10,000, including the small sects that did not make it into the mainstream. However, ever since Thaling had told him about the 3 grades of inherited family clans, he had a feeling that the number of hidden family clans in the Tianxian land would not lose to the number of sections. Bandits! Bian Xingrui replied with a smile. Bandits! After hearing Bian Xingrui's reply, Yu Haoran's eyes could not help but light up. He immediately knew that Yunxiang's training problem had been solved. There were countless mountains and forests in the profound sky continent. Other than some mountains that were occupied by sects and families with inherited legacies, the remaining mountains and forests were occupied by many ambitious experts and powerhouses. Then, they slowly developed into bandits who claimed the mountains as their kings. These bandits could be said to have done all kinds of evil. If Yunxiang used these people as training targets, not only would she be able to quickly increase her battle experience, she would also not feel too guilty. All right. After nodding his head in agreement with Bian Xingrui's plan, Yu Haoran closed his eyes and chose some of the training resources that he had left for her before leaving Guangling City. The Qingmeng Mountains were about 47,000 miles away from Guangling City. It was already close to the border between the southern mountain range and the central mountain range. Compared to the Hengduan mountain range, the Qingmeng Mountains not only had a much wider area, but there were also more mountain peaks in the mountain range. Furthermore, it had an unusually abundant amount of spirit qi, which also caused the strange beasts in the mountain range to be very powerful. Standing in the air above the Qingmeng Mountains, Yu Haoran carefully recalled the route he had taken in his previous life when he accidentally entered the hidden paradise in the Qingmeng Mountains under the lead of the Void Spirit Mouse. After careful recollections and combining them with his divine senses' observation of the Qingmeng Mountains, he finally found the exact location of the paradise on the 29th mountain peak in the depths of the mountain range. Elder Shun, follow me. After reminding the silent Shin Hokong who was standing behind him, Yu Haoran directly flew towards the 29th mountain peak in the depths of the mountain range. Yu Haoran, hide immediately. Just as Yu Haoran flew over the 16th mountain peak, Thaling's slightly panicked reminder suddenly came from his sea of consciousness. Without the slightest hesitation, he used his soul power and Yuan Li to directly charge into the 16th mountain peak, then quickly retracted his aura. Although he didn't understand Yu Haoran's inexplicable actions, Shin Hokong also did the same thing because of the 3-point agreement they had made before leaving Guangling City. Thaling, what's going on? After completely concealing himself, Yu Haoran hurriedly asked. Your opponent, my opponent, is currently on the 29th mountain peak, Thaling said with an incomparably solemn expression. Thaling, what exactly do you mean? Your opponent, my opponent. Thaling's explanation not only failed to make Yu Haoran understand, it instead made him even more confused. Yu Haoran, can you give up on the paradise hidden in this mountain range? Thaling didn't answer Yu Haoran's question and asked instead. Thaling, giving up this opportunity isn't a problem, but do I need a detailed explanation? Yu Haoran really didn't understand why Thaling suddenly became so abnormal. Can you wait until I wake up again? Thaling still didn't explain and continued to ask. Thaling, you should know my current state, and also know why I spent nearly half a month to rush to the Qingmeng Mountains. More and more questions made Yu Haoran gradually feel a trace of hostility in his heart. He knew that if he didn't get an answer, his state of mind would definitely have problems, so he also asked. So, Thaling, in order to ensure that I can smoothly break through to the Martial Saint realm, please tell me what happened? Sigh. After a full half an hour of silence, Thaling couldn't help but let out a long sigh, finally deciding to reveal the most important secret of Yu Haoran's reincarnation. Yu Haoran, leave this place for now, then I will tell you everything in detail. Elder Shun, leave this place. After nodding to Shin Hokong, Yu Haoran directly shot into the sky and quickly left the Qingmeng Mountains. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.